Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel's Thanos' little brother and I have super god villain system. Chapter 61. New York City. With the addition of Hulk, the Avengers have temporarily controlled the situation on the ground, but with the Chitauri constantly pouring out of the space channel, everyone still feels a lot of pressure. If this continues, I'm afraid they will be exhausted to death here. We can't go on like this, we have to close the portal quickly, we don't have an army. Tony said to everyone while checking the degree of loss of armor energy. Hulk, go. Hulk was conscious at this moment. Hearing this, he jumped up to the Stark Tower without any hesitation, killing many Chitauri soldiers along the way. Seeing Hulk climbing to the top of the Stark Tower, Loki instantly knew that Hulk was coming for him, and for a moment, he became a little scared. As a magician, he didn't have the power to compete with the monster Hulk. Get out of here, Loki roared, and the scepter in his hand fired a burst of energy attack, hitting Hulk. But such an attack was not only useless to Hulk, but made him even angrier. I'm a god. Before Loki could finish his words, Hulk suddenly rushed over and knocked Loki away. That was not the end. After the knock, Hulk jumped to Loki's side again, grabbed Loki's ankle and smashed him to the floor. Bang bang bang. For a moment, dust flew everywhere. Hulk smashed several huge deep pits with Loki. Throwing Loki away, Hulk spat and said, "God is so weak." Loki looked like he had lost all hope in life. Then, Tony suddenly received a message from Nick Fury. Tony, there is a fighter plane carrying a nuclear bomb flying towards New York City right now. The nuclear bomb will explode in about 3 minutes. You must stop it at all costs. This is not only about your lives, but also the lives of millions of people in New York City. When Tony got the news, he almost fell from the sky. We are fighting hard here, and you guys want to kill us with nuclear bombs. Are there any of you like that? Although he was extremely angry, no one could change this fact. Now Sook didn't know whether he was alive or dead. Thor was holding back the Chitauri's air force, and Hulk couldn't fly. He had to do this by himself. Although the armor's energy was seriously insufficient, he couldn't just watch the nuclear bomb explode in New York. Jarvis, put all the armor's energy into the thrusters. Sir, the armor only has 100% energy, which is not enough to complete what you are going to do next. Then, Jarvis' voice rang out. I know, but there's nothing I can do. Shoot. Tony's heart sank, but he still said stubbornly. Soon, Tony's speed suddenly increased by more than twice, and he flew towards the attacking missile. Mark 7 is Tony's newest battle armor, equipped with the latest manufactured elements, and its capabilities in all aspects have been greatly improved, so it is not surprising that he caught up with the nuclear bomb. However, although he caught up with the nuclear bomb, Tony still couldn't stop the explosion. The next second, he suddenly thought of something and looked at the space channel above New York City. That's it. Without any hesitation, Tony immediately changed the direction of the nuclear bomb and flew straight up. He wanted to send this nuclear bomb into the space channel. But halfway through the flight, something strange happened. Tony's armor completely consumed its energy, and the time for the nuclear bomb was up. If this were a movie, the ending would be perfect. Tony would send the nuclear bomb into the space channel, and then New York City would be saved, and everyone would be happy. But this is war. It's over. Are we really going to die here? The armor completely lost power, and Tony began to fall with the nuclear bomb. Looking at the countdown on the nuclear bomb, Tony felt powerless. He once thought that as long as the Avengers were established, they could fight against any threat, but now it seems that he was overthinking. At the same time, other people on the ground also saw this scene in the air, and everyone fell into deep despair. 3, 2, 1. The countdown ends and the nuclear bomb explodes. Boom. But at this moment, Tony felt that the scene in front of him suddenly changed. When he opened his eyes, he had already appeared on the ground. What's going on? Tony stood up in shock. It's him. It's Mr. Sook. He's here to save us. Daisy said with tears in her eyes, pointing to the sky with a touching look. Everyone looked up and saw that at this moment, who else could it be but Sook who appeared in the sky? After blowing up the Sentinel and completely absorbing the Sentinel's energy, Sook returned to the Earth without any pause. As a result, if he had come back a second later, I'm afraid everyone would have died. The 000 exploded nuclear bomb stopped in Sook's hand in an incredible circular shape, as if Sook was holding a huge ball. Sook lowered his head, looked down at everyone like a god and said, "You have done a good job, leave it to me next." This guy just loves to show off. Tony cursed in his heart, and then he lay on the ground completely relaxed. He was really tired after just hovering on the edge of life and death. Suke flew into the air with the already exploded nuclear bomb. Suddenly, he had an idea. Then, he injected the power of the Phoenix and some of the Sentinel power he had absorbed into the nuclear bomb. From a distance, it looked like a small planet. "This is a gift for you." Sook smiled, and then threw the energy ball in his hand into the space channel. After just a few seconds, the energy ball landed on the Chidori mothership, followed by another earth-shaking explosion. The entire mothership suddenly exploded. At the same time, an incredibly powerful heat wave suddenly hit the Earth through the space channel. Wherever it passed, the Chidori were completely crushed. When the heat wave was about to hit the Earth, Sook suddenly waved his hand lightly, and in an instant, the space channel in front of him disappeared. The air returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Then, Suke fell to the top floor of the Stoke building. It was time to settle accounts with Loki. But when Sook arrived at Stark Tower, he couldn't help laughing, because at this moment, someone had arrived earlier than him and was settling accounts with Loki. This person was none other than Red Tank. Loki was beaten by Hulk before, and before he could react, Red Tank suddenly came again. Although this guy was not as strong as Hulk, his method of dealing with Loki was much more powerful than Hulk. After Red Tank's torment, Loki was already bruised and swollen, and almost lost half his life, but relying on his strong physique, he did not suffer any serious injuries. Seeing Sook falling from the sky, Red Tank casually threw Loki aside like garbage, and then said with a complaining look on his face, "Boss, why didn't you tell me in advance about such a big thing? When I came, you guys had already finished fighting, how boring." Sook was speechless, because he was too busy recently, he really forgot about Red Tank. If he had brought Red Tank earlier, Tony and the others would not be so embarrassed. But it seems that there is no point in saying this now. Then, Sook said, "Okay, stop complaining, we still have Loki, today you can take revenge and complain, it's up to you." Okay. When Red Tank heard this, his face lit up again, and he rubbed his huge hands and walked towards Loki. "Loki, you controlled me before and made me do so many bad things. I must tear your intestines out today. Don't surrender, I have something to say." Seeing that Red Tank was not going to let him go, Loki's face turned pale with fright. Although his body was very strong, he couldn't withstand being tormented by Red Tank. "Oh, something to say. Red Tank, stop for a moment, I want to hear what he wants to say." Sitting down on a sofa, Suke spoke. Red Tank did not dare to disobey Suke's order, and threw Loki in front of Suke like a dead dog. "Speak." Suke looked at Loki calmly. "Sentinel, did you kill him?" Sook returned safely, but the Sentinel disappeared. Although Loki had roughly guessed the result, he still needed to confirm it. "Not only killing him," Suke smiled and said, "I also absorbed all his power. The explosive power of millions of stars is really strong. Loki, do you want to try it?" After saying this, a ping-pong ball-sized energy ball suddenly appeared in Suke's hand, and this was the power of a star explosion. This time, Loki finally knew that he had completely failed. Sook is an extremely powerful being, and now he has even absorbed all the power of the Sentinel. With his current strength, even his father Odin is no match for him. With this in mind, Loki did not hesitate at all and said directly, "Regarding the deal you mentioned before, does it still count?" "What deal?" Suke asked knowingly. "That is, I will give you the Space Stone and the Mind Stone, and then you won't kill me." As the Prince of Asgard, Loki has never been so humble, but in front of Sook, he had to be humble. "Where are the gems?" Suke did not answer Loki directly, but just asked calmly. "Here." Loki was delighted, thinking that the deal Sook had said before was still valid, so he immediately handed the cosmic cube and his scepter to Sook. Sook first took Loki's scepter, and then gently took off the Mind Stone. Ding! Congratulations to the host for getting the Mind Gem. Reward: 500,000 villain points, one chance to draw a lottery. Suke smiled. This time, he not only absorbed the power of millions of stars from the Sentinel, but also got the mind gem. The system also gave him so many points and chances to draw a lottery. This wave was really worth it. After playing with the mind gem in his hand, Suke put the mind gem in the system space. Then, he looked at the cosmic cube again. Or to be more precise, it was a high imitation cosmic cube. Suke didn't forget that this cosmic cube was a one-time prop he exchanged from the system. After being used by Loki, the cosmic cube no longer had any energy. But then, Suke still took the cosmic cube in his hand in a proper manner, and then exerted a little force, and the cosmic cube broke into pieces at once. Although there was also a light blue gem inside, it no longer had any power. Loki, you dare to use a fake space gem to deceive me? Suke pretended to be angry and asked. Loki panicked and looked at the space gem in Suke's hand. Sure enough, it was fake. What's going on? Why is this happening? This shouldn't be happening. How could it be fake? Loki was a little panicked. Suke found it funny but didn't show it on the surface. He just sneered at Loki and said, I didn't expect it, Loki. You still dare to lie to me until now. I think you really want to die. A surge of murderous intent came over Loki, and he was almost scared to death. Don't listen to me, it's not like that. I don't know what's going on, elder brother. Come and save me, he's going to kill me. Loki was a little panicked at first, then his eyes suddenly lit up, and he shouted behind Suk as if he had seen a life-saving straw. Behind Suk, Thor and Tony flew up with the others. Hulk had turned back into Banner at this time, and seemed to be very tired, being supported by Hawkeye. Although Thor was very angry about Loki's behavior, he still felt a little reluctant when Loki shouted like that. After all, Loki was his younger brother. Suk, I know my brother has caused great harm to the earth, but believe me, he will definitely receive the punishment he deserves, please hand him over to me. I will take him back to Asgard, and he will never come to Earth again. Thor walked to Suk and said apologetically. But Suk ignored Thor at all, because in his opinion, Thor was talking nonsense. Your brother brought such a large group of aliens to the Earth to cause destruction, and you want to take them away with just one word after the incident. What a joke. Besides, Emma's hatred for Loki is no less than that of Red Tank. Before Emma takes revenge, Loki can't go anywhere. If he dares to move, Suk doesn't mind killing him. After saying this, Suk patted Thor's shoulder twice and then disappeared. Thor's face turned pale. If anyone else dared to talk to him like this, he would have hit him with a hammer long ago, but facing Suk, he didn't dare to. Because he knew in his heart that Suke had such strength, and he would do the same. Titan, he always keeps his word. He can't protect Loki. Seeing Suk leave, Loki stood up happily, but before he could do anything, Thor's hammer suddenly pressed down on him, and he fell to the ground again. What are you doing? Let me go. If I don't run away now, I won't be able to escape later. Loki looked at Thor angrily. Sorry, my brother, I can't let you escape. If you escape, Suk will destroy Asgard, has absorbed all the power of the Sentinels. Even our father is no match for him. I'm sorry. Thor shook his head and looked at Loki sadly. Are you crazy? Loki shouted, Thor, my dear brother, I am your brother. Are you going to watch him kill me? Sorry, for Asgard, Thor said slowly, his tone was extremely sad. Although Tony, Black Widow and others had always hated Loki, as partners who had fought together, they trusted Thor very much. Seeing Thor like this, Black Widow immediately advised, Thor, don't be like this, Suk may just be talking, he may not really do it. No, Natasha, you don't understand the Titans. Thor shook his head and said, the Titans are powerful and dangerous. They always keep their promises. I can see that he is not joking, he is serious. No one can stop the Titans. Quote. For a moment, Natasha didn't know what to say. At this moment, Suk finally came back and brought Emma with him. When Suk saw the hammer on Loki, he knew that it was Thor's masterpiece. Sure enough, Thor didn't dare to go against his will. He is yours now, and I am going to kill you. Suke said softly to Emma beside him. Looking at Loki lying on the ground in front of him, Emma began to burn with anger at the things that Loki had controlled her to do before. Knowing that his life was in Emma's hands at the moment, Loki suddenly changed his usual arrogance and begged Emma, "Emma, I was wrong before, please forgive me. I promise to change my ways in the future. I will never do bad things again." "Shut up. Did my boss ask you to speak?" Red Tank said with an unhappy look on his face. Then he grabbed Loki's ankle and lifted him up, looking at Emma and said, "Emma, tell me, how do we deal with this guy? Do you want me to twist his head off first or pull out his intestines first?" "Captain, can't you persuade Mr. Sook? Loki is a bad guy, yes, but isn't it a bit too cruel to treat him like this?" Daisy whispered in Roger's ear. Rogers shook his head gently, and said sadly, "Believe me, no one can stop him from doing anything he decides." After saying this, Rogers turned and left. Then, everyone's eyes fell on Emma, because everyone knew that Loki's fate would be decided by Emma next. Sighing slightly, Emma suddenly shook her head and said, "Forget it, let him go." "What?" Red Tank almost jumped up when he heard this. While shaking Loki in his hand, he said in disbelief, "Emma, are you controlled by this guy again? How can you let him go? Have you forgotten? It was this guy who made us unable to raise our heads in front of all the mutants." "You were right, but what will killing him change? I don't hate him anymore, I just want to live a quiet life," Emma said, and came to Sook again, and then leaned gently on Sook. At this moment, how could she still be the White Queen? She was just Sook's little woman. Sook was not too surprised by Emma's decision, because Emma herself was a kind girl, and such an ending was within his expectations. But then, he jokingly asked, "Are you sure you want to let him go like this? Not cutting off an arm or a leg or something?" Right. Red Tank quickly agreed, "It's okay to remove a leg." Emma rolled her eyes at Sook, and said strangely, "If you want to remove it, do it yourself. Send me back now, and remember to come back for dinner in the evening." Sook stopped talking, just opened a space channel, and then sent Emma back. At this time, Loki finally breathed a sigh of relief. In his opinion, his life was finally saved. Sitting down on the sofa again, Sook looked at Loki and said, "It's really a headache. So what should I do with you next? Although Emma has forgiven you, you still deceived me about the space gem, which I absolutely cannot forgive." Obviously, Sook was going to trick Loki. Loki just wanted to cry now. He himself couldn't figure out what was going on. It was obviously a real space gem before, so how could it suddenly become fake? But then, he suddenly thought of something and shouted, "Wait! Ether particles, I have a way. I promise you, I will find an infinity stone for you. As long as you let me go." Thor on the side also hurriedly assured, "Sook, I swear as the Prince of Asgard that Loki did not lie, we will definitely find a way to find an infinity stone for you." Although the infinity stone is a very important thing, it is obvious that Loki's life is more important than the infinity stone. Ether particles, isn't this the reality gem? Sook's eyes lit up. If it was just Loki who said this, he probably wouldn't believe it, because Loki had no credibility at all. But if Thor also made such a guarantee, then it would be a different story. After all, as the Prince of Asgard, Thor's credibility is still trustworthy. Thinking of this, Sook looked at Thor and said, "Thor, I don't believe Loki, but I believe you. Since you have guaranteed him, I will let him go for now, but I hope you don't forget this matter, otherwise I will be very angry." "Don't worry, this is my promise, I will definitely keep it," Thor said seriously. "Very good, then you can take Loki away now." Sook waved his hand. Although Red Tank looked unhappy, he still threw Loki to the ground. Of course, he didn't forget to step on Loki in the end. Loki felt wronged, but he was helpless. Baby felt so bitter. The war was over, and there was no point for Thor to stay here any longer. In addition, he had to help Sook find the reality stone, so Thor took Loki back to Asgard. Because the mothership was destroyed, the Chitauri and war beasts still on Earth had already lost their lives. Although they messed up New York City, the Avengers won after all. On the other side, after seeing all this, there was a cheer on the S.H.I.E.L.D.'s aerospace carrier, because they finally won. They finally protected the Earth. In the following period of time, the Battle of New York became a topic of discussion for almost everyone. All newspapers and news programs in the world were constantly reporting on this matter. Similarly, the Avengers became a heroic organization recognized by everyone. As for Suk, he completed the tasks assigned by the system. At present, his system villain points have reached nearly 2 million. He also won good things in the previous 2 lotteries. Everything seems to be perfect. But it's not like that. Suk hasn't seen Chin for a long time. Sometimes when he called her, Chin wouldn't tell him where she was. Suk always felt that Chin was hiding something from him, but Chin didn't want to say it. She just told him not to worry. Chin was Suk's woman, and Suk didn't want to force her, so he had no choice. As for the mind gem he got, Suk felt that it was a bit useless and far less useful than the space gem, because the mind gem could mainly control people's minds and make them do things according to his commands, but Suk didn't like it, so the mind gem had been lying in the Su system space. During this time, Suk was not idle either. He was not even on Earth most of the time, but came to a desolate place in the universe, and then he skillfully mastered the power of millions of stars that he had absorbed from the Sentinels before. This kind of power is extremely terrifying. It can destroy a planet. Suk doesn't want to accidentally destroy the Earth, which would be a bit too much. So in the recent period of time, he has been wandering in the universe. Generally speaking, this period of time has been relatively peaceful. Until this day, he received a call from Tony. Suk, where are you? Suk looked at the sun below him and said, I am testing the temperature my body can withstand in the sun. What's the matter? Etc. You said you were on the sun. The sun in the sky. On Earth, Tony looked up at the sun in the sky with a speechless face. That's right, the power of the Sentinel not only gave me stronger strength, but also made my body stronger. For now, the sun can't destroy my body. Suk said slowly, but his expression was helpless, because although the sun couldn't cause any harm to him, the clothes on his body were not the same. Every time he didn't get close to the sun, his clothes would turn into ashes in an instant. Fortunately, there were not many people in the sky, otherwise this would definitely become a big news at the cosmic level. Suk had already thought of the title, A Man Running Naked on the Sun. Cell phones on Earth cannot be used in outer space, and this is when the Mind Stone that Suk had obtained came in handy. Although Tony called, Suk didn't have a phone. He just used a special method to use the Mind Stone as a phone. On Earth, Tony was a little drunk. Although he always knew that Suk was very strong, he never thought that Suk was so strong that he could walk on the sun. It seems that Suk has to join the Avengers. Otherwise, if there is another enemy like the Sentinel in the future, they will not be able to deal with it. But of course, this kind of thing can't be said at the moment. Tony came back to his senses and said, I almost forgot to tell you something serious. I'm in Washington now. There's going to be a meeting here about the Mutant Registration Act. You have a special relationship with mutants, so I think I have to tell you about this. Also, Professor X, Hank and the others seem to be here, including your girlfriend. Do you want to go? What did you say? Tony hadn't finished speaking when Suk's voice suddenly rang out, and it rang in Tony's ear. This sudden voice almost scared Tony to death. Looking back, Tony saw that Suk had appeared behind him, wearing a suit. Because he didn't have a suitable battle armor, Suk's system space always had spare clothes, so he could just change into a suit when needed. Please, can you please say hello before you show up next time? People who scare others will kill them. Tony hung up the phone and said speechlessly. Suk waved his hand and asked, Okay, tell me what's going on. The Mutant Registration Act is also a well-known major event in the X-Men. Suk had no interest in this matter, but when he heard Tony say that Jean was here, he instantly became interested. He wanted to find out what was going on. Then, with Tony's explanation, Suk finally understood what was going on. The Mutant Registration Act actually means that all the information of all mutants is put into archives, and they are subject to government management and supervision at any time, and sometimes they even have to report to official agencies regularly. It is almost the same as a human's own personal file, recording each person's characteristics and past experiences, so that humans can effectively manage society and maintain order. However, it is obvious that mutants are not ordinary humans, so this bill has been rejected by almost all mutants, but the United States has never compromised, which led to this meeting on the Mutant Registration Act. And the reason for all this is that a congressman was killed by a mutant half a month ago. Half a month ago? Wasn't that the day when Chin left the mutant school? Suk thought with some surprise, and then he finally understood why Chin had never told him where she was. This is a matter between mutants and humans, and neither Jean nor Professor X seems to want to interfere. Let's go in and take a look, Suk said, and walked in first. When Suk and Tony arrived at the conference room, it was already full of people, including mutants and humans. At this moment, a congressman was expressing his own theory. Suk did not deliberately look for Jean, but just found a place to sit down with Tony. First of all, I think everyone knows that mutants have superpowers. Their abilities vary. Some can walk through walls, some have telepathy, some can control objects, and there are too many to count. Some of these abilities are extremely destructive to social order in human society. For example, mind control. If the owner is a lunatic, or holds a grudge against others for some trivial matter, and controls them to make them commit suicide, and ordinary police officers do not know the existence of these mutants, will these people die in vain? Will the mutant become even more lawless as a result? Some mutants have the ability to pass through walls. Do these mutants break into banks and other people's homes at will to steal things? But because no one knows and there is no evidence, they are allowed to go unpunished. Do the losses only fall on the victims? In summary, I think the Mutant Registration Act must be implemented. If mutants want to live with humans, then they must be the same as humans. As the congressman finished speaking, all the humans present applauded, even Tony beside Suk, while the mutants were silent. Although Suk didn't like what the congressman said, he had to admit that what he said was indeed reasonable and almost impossible to refute. Then, in the center of the meeting, a man suddenly walked up, and it was Professor X. Hello everyone, my name is Charles Francis Xavier, I am a mutant and also the principal of the mutant school. What I want to tell you is that mutants are also human beings. We just want to live in peace with humans. We have been doing this all the time. I keep telling my students to believe in humans and help humans. We have never been your enemies. Professor, we never said you were the enemy. We just want you to register, that's all. Humans can register, so why can't mutants? A congressman said. Register. Are you sure you really want us to register, and not to use us for experiments? Look at the wounds on my body. This is the work of you humans. You humans only want to control us, and never thought about living in peace with us. Suddenly, a mutant ran to the center of the venue in the crowd, and then suddenly tore off his clothes. For a moment, everyone saw that the mutant's body was covered with dense needle holes and various wounds. Then, all the congressmen were embarrassed, because they all knew that they had planned to weaponize mutants a long time ago. However, even with such a small episode, it still failed to prevent the passage of the Mutant Registration Act. In the end, the Mutant Registration Act was passed and the implementation date was next month. No matter how Professor X and other mutants refuted, it was still useless. The mutants present were very angry, but they all suppressed their inner anger, and they were forced to wear suppressors before coming, so they couldn't exert their own strength at all. Suk sighed slightly and said to Tony on the side, "Get ready, the war is coming soon." Tony said in surprise, "Are you saying that mutants will go to war with humans because of this?" Almost. After all, not all mutants are like Professor X. Suk said slowly, and couldn't help but think of Magneto. Facing humans, Professor X might have a good talk, but Magneto, this guy doesn't have such good patience. In the history of X-Men, Magneto has led mutants and humans to war more than once. After the meeting, humans were jubilant, but mutants were dejected. Then, just when everyone was about to leave, the door not far away suddenly made a loud, clang, sound, and then Suk suddenly saw a silver-white figure flashing in the conference room. That was Quicksilver. In the Marvel Universe, there is only one person who can move at a high speed, and that person is Quicksilver. Suk guessed his identity almost instantly. What happened? Who? What happened? For a moment, the whole scene became a little chaotic. Seeing this, the guards around took out their pistols and pointed them at all the mutants. Don't do it, we have no ill intentions, this is not what we did. Seeing this, Professor X shouted nervously, and the mutants behind him were also scared at this moment. No one expected such a thing to happen. Among these people, Chin was also included. Suk's face changed. He originally didn't intend to take action this time, but seeing that someone had pointed a gun at Chin, how could he hold back? Dare to touch his woman, it's simply courting death. In a flash, Suke appeared beside Chin in an instant, and then held Chin in his arms. Chin felt a darkening in front of her eyes, and when she reacted, she saw that she was already in Suke's arms. Why are you here? Chin asked in surprise and excitement. There is no other way. You refused to tell me where you are, so I can only come to find you myself. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. Suke said with a smile. Don't move, who are you? Put your hands up, or we will shoot. Suddenly at this moment, all the guards noticed Suk, and then all the guns were pointed at Suk again. Suk's eyes turned cold, and a murderous intent suddenly surged in his heart. But at this moment, another silver-white light flashed, and then the pistols in the hands of all the guards disappeared. At the same time, Tony had already put on the armor, then flew down from his seat, landed in front of Suk and shouted, "Hey, hey, hey, don't be nervous, don't be nervous." Tony was really worried that Suk would kill all the humans here if they didn't agree with him. At this time, Professor X and others also found Suk, but the situation was urgent, so they didn't bother to say hello. Hey, Suke, please control yourself a little and don't kill anyone, okay? I didn't bring you here to kill anyone today. Tony turned to Suke and said, I'll try my best. Suke said slowly, his eyes still following Quicksilver, who kept moving in the conference room, and it seemed that no one had noticed him until now. Did you make those guns just now? Tony looked at Suke's hand curiously, but found that Suke had nothing in his hand. No, I did what I did just now. Before Suke could answer, a voice suddenly came from not far away. Everyone looked back and saw that at this moment, a boy in silver clothes was sitting on the head of a congressman. His hands loosened, and dozens of pistols fell to the ground with a clattering sound. It was indeed Quicksilver. Quicksilver's real name is Pietro Django Maximoff. There are many versions of his origin story, but it is currently recognized that he is the son of Magneto. He also has a twin sister, Scarlet Witch. Quicksilver has the ability to move at high speed, and his sister Scarlet Witch is even more powerful. She is an Omega mutant with chaos magic and the ability to modify probability. Wait, if Quicksilver is here, doesn't that mean Scarlet Witch is here too? Suke thought with some surprise. Kid, who are you? This is not a place where you can act wild. I advise you to leave now. Tony said, as you can see, I am also a mutant, but unlike them, I will not sign this shitty mutant registration bill. Quicksilver said, and picked up the mutant registration bill on the table, and then tore it into pieces at super speed and threw it into the air. Then, he suddenly came to Professor X, again, and then looked at Professor X, with some disappointment and said, Professor, I originally came to seek your help, but now it seems that you can't even help yourself. I am very disappointed in you. After saying this, Quicksilver's figure flashed again, and then he ran quickly to the door. But when Quicksilver ran to the door, his body suddenly stopped, and he actually lost his speed. What's going on? Quicksilver shouted in surprise. Boy, it seems that you didn't understand the situation here before you came. There are mutant inhibitors everywhere around here. You can use your ability to get in, but you can't use your ability to get out. A guard said fiercely, and then knocked Quicksilver to the ground with a punch. Stop it, Professor X said angrily. He is just a child, he didn't hurt anyone. No, Professor, he is a mutant, and a dangerous mutant at that. He must be locked up. The congressman who was ridden on by Quicksilver before said angrily while pinching his neck. Suk has no interest in Quicksilver, but he has a great interest in his sister Scarlet Witch, because the power possessed by Scarlet Witch is chaos magic, which is a superpower that can be compared with the power of the Phoenix. But it is obvious that if you want to find Scarlet Witch, you still have to rely on Quicksilver. Thinking of this, Suk said to Jean in his arms, wait for me here, I'm going to do something. Yeah, Chin nodded obediently. Reaching out to stop the guard who had handcuffed Quicksilver, Suk said lightly, let him go. Who are you? Are you a mutant too? The guard asked with a vigilant look on his face, and he had no intention of letting Quicksilver go. Suke was too lazy to say it a second time. His eyes turned cold, and a murderous intent mixed with domineering aura spread out. The guard was so scared that he couldn't help but take a few steps back and then knelt on the ground. Pulling off the handcuffs that handcuffed Quicksilver, Suke asked, if I'm not mistaken, you should have a sister, right? Where is she? How did you know that? Quicksilver asked in surprise. Do you know us? I guess so. Soo-K nodded. As a Marvel fan in his previous life, he naturally knew Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. When Quicksilver heard this, his face instantly lit up again, and he hurriedly said, "Since you know us, can you help me save my sister? My sister has been captured, but I can't save her alone." Captured? Soo-K was a little surprised, and then asked, "Who?" "I don't know either, but according to the information I got, they seem to be called Hydra." Quicksilver recalled. Hydra? Why is it Hydra again? Soo-K was a little speechless. It seemed that he and Hydra were really destined to be together. "Okay, I promise to help you save your sister, but you have to wait until I finish dealing with things here. Before that, you'd better not run around," Soo-K instructed. "Don't worry, as long as you can help me rescue my sister, I will do whatever you say," Quicksilver said excitedly. Actually, Quicksilver's original plan was to seek help from Professor X. He even went to the mutant school, but was told that Professor X was in a meeting in Washington, so he rushed all the way to Washington, but after seeing Professor X again, he was greatly disappointed. Here, Quicksilver saw that Professor X and other mutants were treated like prisoners by humans. Faced with all kinds of unfair treatment from humans, they only knew how to accept it. This made him completely disappointed in Professor X. But when he saw Sook, hope suddenly ignited in Quicksilver's heart. Walking to Professor X, Soo-K casually pulled off the suppressors on Professor X and Chin's necks, and said slowly, "Professor, let's go. There is no point in staying here any longer. Believe it or not, humans will never truly accept mutants. There may be a short period of peace between you, but this peace will never last too long." Professor X felt bitter in his heart. How could he not know this truth? But for the sake of peace, he had been enduring it all the time. Even though he was treated like an animal and had a suppressor put on his neck, he still tried to make humans believe in mutants. But it was obvious that everything was in vain. Humans don't trust mutants. There will be no peace between mutants and humans. Unlike Magneto, he has always insisted on a path opposite to Magneto. Even if he sometimes thinks Magneto is right, he still insists on his own path. But now, he suddenly doesn't want to persist. Professor X took another look at the Mutant Registration Act in his hand, shook it gently, and then threw it on the ground like trash. "Sorry, I don't agree." "We don't agree either." All of a sudden, all the mutants present threw the mutant registration bills in their hands to the ground. The whole place was in chaos again. The humans present were panicked because they were really worried that the mutants would hurt them. "Professor X, how could you reject us? Don't you know what the consequences will be?" a congressman asked bravely, his trembling voice showing his mood at the moment. "I know, but please don't forget, members of the Congress, we are mutants, we will not be slaughtered, although we look forward to peace, but if the war comes, then we will not hesitate to fight back," Professor X said coldly. Hearing this, Soo-K smiled slightly. Professor X is finally not a saintly fool. In the entire X-Men, although Professor X is kind, sometimes his kindness is outrageous. He is almost a recognized saintly fool, which has led to the destruction of his mutant school many times. Now seeing Professor X say such words, Soo-K is still quite relieved in his heart. It seems that his arrival has changed a lot of things. On the other hand, Tony is now extremely headache. He originally just wanted to pull Soo-K to be a listener, but he didn't expect to cause such trouble. If humans really go to war with mutants, Soo-K will definitely stand on the side of mutants. With Soo-K, how can humans be the opponent of mutants? When Tony thought of this, he was so angry that he wanted to slap himself. At this point, there was no need to say anything more. Then, Soo-K opened a passage leading to the mutant school with a thought. "Let's go." After saying hello, Sook walked in first, followed by Professor X, Jean, Hank, and Quicksilver. Soon, all the mutants in the conference room left, and even Tony left with Sook, because Tony felt that he needed to persuade Professor X and Sook. After all, war is not a joke. The congressman and the remaining humans looked at each other, and finally shook their heads helplessly, because everyone knew that the world was afraid that another war would come. In the mutant school, after all the mutants were settled, Professor X sat on the chair with a headache, pinching his forehead, and began to think about what to do next. If he directly rejected the mutant registration bill, the result would be that the human army would start to arrest mutants, and his mutant school would definitely be the first to bear the brunt. There were still hundreds of mutant children here, and he had to find a way to protect them. So what should we do next? Professor X frowned and looked at the people in front of him and asked. What else can we do? Although we don't like war, if humans want to take action, then we will never back down. Wolverine said slowly. Wolverine is notoriously bad-tempered, and Professor X didn't take him to the previous meeting for fear that he would cause something bad, but he still learned about the whole thing from Hank, which surprised him. He didn't expect that Professor X, who always wanted peace, would reject humans. But of course, this is definitely a good thing, because he would never sign that bullshit Mutant Registration Act. Seeing that Professor X was having a headache, Hank immediately said, Professor, don't be like this, you did the right thing. Although we hope for peace and hope to integrate into humans, humans really cannot accept us. Just like Suk said, there will be no peace between us and humans. Hello, don't say that, okay. Not all humans are like this. There's no need to slam everyone. I just went through the Battle of New York and almost died there. I know what war feels like. Believe me, no one likes war. Tony shook his head and said with emotion. Tony, I understand what you said, but as you can see, do you think humans will really accept mutants? I have been trying to make humans and mutants live in peace, but I have never succeeded. Maybe I was really wrong. Professor X looked at Tony and spoke slowly. Suk. Tony heard this and suddenly thought of something. Then he looked around and asked, wait a minute. Where is Suk? I don't think I've seen him since I came back. Where did he go? Not sure, I think he took the piano to play in space. Space. Tony is a little drunk. See all sangtakviet.tk. But of course, those were not real fireworks, but the scenery produced by the explosion of a planet. When Chin said that he wanted to watch the fireworks here, Suk almost blew up a planet in front of him without thinking, and then there was this beautiful scene. But of course, not all planets in the universe have life. The planet that Suk just blew up was a planet without life. Chin did not have the ability to fly and breathe in space, but this was nothing to Suk at the moment. Since he got the power of the Sentinel, Suk was almost omnipotent. He released an energy shield at will, which allowed Chin to fly and breathe. When Suk first came to Earth, he shared with Chin about Titan and the scenery in the universe, but that was only Suk's memory. How could it be as real as seeing it in person? When looking at the scenery in front of him, Chin felt inexplicably excited. But after the excitement, she thought of something, then turned her head to look at Suk beside her and said, Suk, do you think humans and mutants will really fight? I guess so. Anyway, humans will never accept you. The so-called Mutant Registration Act is just to control you. Suk said slowly. In the Marvel world, there is not only the Mutant Registration Act for mutants, but also the Superhero Registration Act for the Avengers and the Registration Act for the Inhumans. The culprit that caused the Avengers' Civil War was the so-called Superhero Registration Act. Even because of this act, Spider-Man's Aunt May was killed by Spider-Man's enemies. Simply put, this act will only cause trouble and is useless. But I don't like war. I just want to live a quiet life. Jean said a little disappointed. Suk smiled and scratched Jean's nose, then said, some things cannot be stopped whether you like it or not. Even if Professor X agrees to the Mutant Registration Act, don't forget that there is still Magneto. Will this guy agree to the Mutant Registration Act? He certainly won't agree. At that time, there will still be a war between mutants and humans. This is absolutely unavoidable. In X-Men, Magneto has led mutants to attack humans many times. If it weren't for the X-Men led by Professor X to stop them, I'm afraid that humans would have been wiped out by Magneto long ago. If Magneto really joins forces with Professor X to fight against humans, then humans have little chance of winning. That's right, humans have superheroes like Tony, Hulk, Thor, and Captain Marvel, but what about the mutants? Let alone Jean, who has awakened the power of the Phoenix, all the guys in front will have to kneel down and call him Grandpa. Not to mention Professor X, Magneto, King and a bunch of Omega-level mutants. Mutants have always lost to humans, only because Professor X and Magneto have united. If these two guys really wanted to unite and fight against humans, humans would have no chance of winning. Noticing that Chin seemed to be a little worried, Suke smiled and said, "Okay, don't worry. I promise you that no matter what happens, I will stand by you to protect you. Is that okay?" "You are so nice." Chin blushed, then suddenly came forward and pecked Suke lightly on the lips. Suke licked his lips and said with a look of unsatisfied satisfaction, "This seems a little bit not enough. What else do you want?" Chin's face turned red like a ripe apple. "What do you think?" Suke said as he turned over and pressed Chin under him. For a moment, Chin and Suke looked at each other. Chin seemed to realize something as she stared at Suke's burning eyes. This is space. What's wrong with space? This is romantic. Well, Chin was about to say something, but then Suke's lips came close to hers. Then, Suke's hands began to become unsteady. In the endless universe, under the beautiful scenery of stars, Suke finally ate Chin. And it also replenished the power of the phoenix. Although Suke had imagined the scene of eating Chin many times before, it must be said that Suke never expected that he would actually eat Chin in space in the end. After a long time, when everything was over, Suk took Jean back to the mutant school. Jean was embarrassed about what happened just now, so she hid in her room as soon as she came back. As for Suk, he came to Professor X's office. When he came to the office, Suk found that Tony had left, and Quicksilver was already waiting for him here. "Is the matter done? If it is done, please go and save my sister now." When he saw Suke for the first time, Quicksilver said anxiously, "I have promised to rescue her sister, but before that I want to find out what is going on and then make a plan," but he doesn't want to wait at all. Professor X said helplessly, "It is very dangerous to send people to rescue people without knowing anything, especially when the other party is Hydra." Suke naturally doesn't care about any danger, because all dangers are nothing to him, but before taking action, he feels that he really needs to find out what is going on. "I will go to save your sister, but before that, you have to tell me what is going on," Suk said after sitting down on the sofa. Seeing this, Quicksilver could only tell the story of what happened. As two mutants, Quicksilver has always been dependent on his sister Scarlet Witch. Because of their special identities, they have to move every once in a while, but who knew that even so, they still couldn't escape the fate of being hunted. Just the night before yesterday, a group of Hydra soldiers suddenly broke into their home. Although he escaped with his own speed, his sister was anesthetized and taken away by the Hydra soldiers. Although he followed the Hydra soldiers to find their base, the guards inside were too strict, and there were traps for mutants everywhere. He tried several times but failed to get in. In the end, he could only come for help. So that's how it is. After listening to Quicksilver's story, Suk nodded thoughtfully, but then he thought of something and asked, "To be honest, I'm a little curious. Why don't you ask your father for help when something like this happens?" Quicksilver's father, Magneto, is an extremely powerful existence in the entire Marvel world. If he takes action, who in Hydra can stop him? But after hearing this, Quicksilver was a little confused. He said with a puzzled look on his face, "My father? I don't know who my father is. Do you know?" Suk was a little surprised. No wonder Quicksilver didn't ask Magneto for help. It turned out that this guy didn't know who his biological father was. But at this point, Suk was ready to be a good person and let Quicksilver know who his father was. "Your father is also a mutant, and a powerful mutant. He is Magneto." Phew. Before Suke finished speaking, Professor X, who was drinking water at the side, suddenly spat out all the water he had just drunk, and then looked at Suke with a shocked face. He looked even more shocked than Quicksilver. What did you say? He is Magneto's son." Professor X stood up and said in disbelief. Quicksilver was also confused at this moment. He knew Magneto. It was he who rescued Magneto during the Battle of Washington. But to say that Magneto was his father, that was ridiculous. Isn't this a bit too much? Are you sure? Then, Quicksilver looked at Suke in disbelief. "S.H.I.E.L.D. has information about Magneto. I accidentally checked it before, so I know about this matter," Suk said with a smile, and threw the pot to S.H.I.E.L.D. again. Then, Professor X looked at Quicksilver with a different look. There was both envy and jealousy in his eyes. Even without telepathy, Suke knew what Professor X was thinking. Old Juan actually has a son, and I don't even have one. Suke smiled helplessly and said, Professor, don't be too envious. In fact, not only Magneto has a son, you also have a son. His name is David Charles Haller, an Omega-level mutant, and his mother seems to be called Gabrielle. Professor X almost knelt down to Suke when he heard this. Shit, I have a son too. For a moment, Professor X suddenly thought of something that happened a long time ago. When he first realized that he had superpowers, he joined a medical team in Haifa, Israel, where he met his lifelong friend and enemy Eric Lenscher, also known as Magneto, and a Jewish woman, Gabrielle Haller. He used his psychic powers to cure Gabrielle's mental disorder caused by the Nazi Holocaust, and the two began to fall in love and had a relationship, but eventually broke up. He didn't know that Gabrielle had given birth to a son for him. Suke, I'll leave it to you to help Quicksilver save his sister. I have something to do first. If you need anything, let Logan, Hank and the others do it. After saying this anxiously, Professor X hurried out without waiting for Suke and Quicksilver to reply. Suke knew that Professor X was going to look for his son, X. After the professor left, Quicksilver still had a hard time reacting. Suke could see that it seemed difficult for this guy to accept that his father was Magneto. Okay, you will know about your father when you meet him later. Now let's go save your sister first. Tell me where that place is exactly. Suke said. For a moment, Quicksilver finally reacted and told Suke the specific location. Then, Suke's mind moved, and a space channel appeared in front of him. On the other side of the space channel was a military base built in a wilderness. That special sign, who else could it be but Hydra? This ability is really useful. With a sigh in his heart, Quicksilver followed Suke into the room. Outside the base, Quicksilver hid behind a big tree and pointed to the base not far away and said to Suke, I have tried it before. It seems that there are things installed around this base that can suppress the abilities of mutants. If you want to get in, you must destroy those things first. Hello, what are you doing? Can you hear me? At the end of his words, Quicksilver shouted anxiously, because before he could finish his words, Suke had already walked over. In Suke's opinion, the so-called mutant suppressor was simply a joke. Anyway, he was not a mutant. Hey, did you hear me? We can't get in like this. Who is it? Quicksilver came to Suke, ready to persuade Suke not to be so rash, but he had just said half of his words when a scolding suddenly came from not far away. Oops, Quicksilver's heart tightened, and he was about to use his speed to knock out the enemy, but before he could do anything, Suke beside him suddenly snapped his fingers, and then he was surprised to find that the body of the person who had spoken before was suddenly shattered and turned into a pile of powder. What's going on? Quicksilver was a little confused. Did you do that just now? Quicksilver came back to his senses and asked Suke in disbelief. Suke just smiled and said, stay close to me and don't run around. Then, Suke walked towards the gate of the base again. With the power of the Sentinel, Suke is now almost omnipotent. He can punch out a black hole that can swallow a planet, or easily tear a black hole apart, and even temporarily distort reality. Snapping his fingers to kill people is simply a weak skill for him. With a snap of his fingers, all the Hydra soldiers at the door turned into powder. With a snap of his fingers, the iron door weighing tens of thousands of pounds was lifted up in an instant. With a snap of the fingers, all the weapons turned into molten iron. At this time, Quicksilver could only walk behind Suke in confusion, because he really didn't know what to say. At the same time, in an office in the base, a Hydra officer was looking at the monitor in front of him with a surprised look. He saw that the man did nothing, but just snapped his fingers, and his men turned into powder. Similarly, with another snap of fingers, the iron door weighing tens of thousands of pounds was blown away. All the weapons also turned into molten iron with the other party's snap of fingers. Who is this guy? A mutant? The Hydra officer asked in surprise. He had never seen anything like this before. It was simply unbelievable. Although Hydra still exists, in order to prevent being found by S.H.I.E.L.D., most of them have no contact with each other. Therefore, he knew nothing about Suke and thought Suke was just a mutant. But this seems a bit wrong. If he is really a mutant, then the mutant inhibitors placed around him should make him lose his superpowers, right? Why didn't he lose his superpowers? Waves of doubts surged into the Hydra officer's mind, but then he still gave the order. Close all entrances and exits of the base, release anesthetic gas, and tell everyone to capture him alive. I am very interested in this man. The Hydra officer was fascinated by the power of the Scarlet Witch he had captured before. He did not expect that another powerful mutant would come at this time. To be honest, he was really excited. What's going on? At the same time, Sook and Quicksilver, who were looking for the Scarlet Witch in the base, also noticed something wrong. All the doors in front and behind were closed in an instant. At the same time, a gas began to spread throughout the base. Not good. There's something wrong with this gas. Soon, Quicksilver felt his head getting heavy, and he couldn't even stand steadily, and his consciousness gradually became blurred. But Sook still had no discomfort at this moment, and such gas couldn't hurt him at all. Seeing Quicksilver like this, Sook shook his head helplessly at first, then opened a space channel and threw Quicksilver into the infirmary of the mutant school. Sure enough, he was more suitable for acting alone, and teamwork was really not suitable for him. What ability is this? Space teleportation. The Hydra officer was surprised to see through the monitor that Suke could actually open the space channel. Of course, what surprised him even more was that the anesthetic gas had no effect on this man. Is this man not a human? On the other hand, after sending Quicksilver away, Sook's actions became more unscrupulous. Before, because Quicksilver was following him like a tail, he didn't dare to make any big moves, fearing that he might accidentally hurt Quicksilver, but now that Quicksilver had left, he had no scruples. If it weren't for saving Scarlet Witch, Sook wouldn't have needed to go through so much trouble. He could just throw these guys into space with the base. However, in order to save people, he could only be patient. He killed 3 Hydra soldiers wearing gas masks again. Sook suddenly thought that instead of searching aimlessly, it would be better to catch someone and ask. Soon, 2 more Hydra soldiers came to the door. This time, Sook didn't kill them, but teleported in front of them, and then said softly, "Where is the girl you caught before? Tell me." For a moment, the mind gem in the system space was sensed, and the 2 soldiers instantly became Sook's puppets. "The girl is locked in a secret room in the basement," a soldier said, and even pointed out a way for Sook. "Very good." Suke patted the soldier on the shoulder, and then whispered in his ear, "Kill the other guy and then commit suicide." After saying this, Suke left without looking back. Soon, 2 more gunshots rang out behind him, and then 2 bodies fell to the ground. With the guidance of the Hydra soldiers, Sook quickly arrived at the basement. Although there were many Hydra soldiers here, they all turned into powder with a snap of his fingers. This is the simplest and most flawless way to kill. Melting the iron door of the basement, Sook finally saw the Scarlet Witch, who was in a coma. It has to be said, this guy is really beautiful, even more beautiful and slim than in the movie. "Who are you? Why are you looking for trouble with us?" Just when Sook was about to rescue Scarlet Witch, a voice rang out in the secret room. Sook heard it, but he ignored it, because in his opinion, except for himself and Scarlet Witch, everyone else in the base was going to die. What was there to say to a dying person? After being ignored by Sook, the Hydra officer instantly became a little angry. At the same time, he also knew that he could not stop Sook from rescuing Scarlet Witch. With the mentality of burning both sides, he opened a drawer next to him and took out a button. "Go to hell." In the secret room, the sleeping Scarlet Witch was suddenly awakened by a strong electric current. The strong pain made her unable to control her power at all. For a moment, a powerful force began to surge out of her body, and then instantly shattered everything around her. "This is chaos magic." Sook was a little surprised. He didn't expect that Hydra had already figured out how to stimulate Scarlet Witch to unleash her power. Just like when the Sentinels exploded before, the Chaos Cube could no longer spread when it got close to Sook, and was then completely destroyed by Sook, inhaled into the body. Then, Scarlet Witch also fell to the ground, but before she fell to the ground, Suke had already stepped forward and hugged her in his arms. This really has no end. Feeling the new power in his body, Suke smiled and shook his head again. It seemed that the mysterious power was becoming less and less valuable recently. Suke casually opened a space channel, carried the Scarlet Witch and walked out, and then appeared outside the base. Goodbye. With a slight smile, Suke snapped his fingers again. In an instant, the Hydra base in front of him suddenly disappeared completely. At the same time, a Hydra base suddenly appeared in space. Then, just when Suke was about to take Scarlet Witch away, the Scarlet Witch in his arms gradually woke up. But when she saw Suke for the first time, a red light flashed in her hand, and then hit Suke's chest. Bang! The red light dissipated in an instant, and Scarlet Witch felt as if she had hit a piece of metal, and her wrist was hurting badly. Suke looked down at the Scarlet Witch in his arms speechlessly and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Is this your way of repaying your savior?" Savior. Scarlet Witch was stunned at first, then seemed to remember something, and began to look around. Here, where is this place? How did I get here? I seem to have been caught before, etc. Did you save me? At this moment, Scarlet Witch finally reacted. Is there anyone else here besides you and me? Suke smiled helplessly. Scarlet Witch blushed first, then said, "Thank you for saving me, but could you please put me down first?" Forehead. Suke then realized that he was still holding someone. After putting Scarlet Witch on the ground and resting for a while, Scarlet Witch looked at Suke and said, "Are you a mutant too? And how did you find me? Don't get me wrong." Suke shook his head and said, "I'm not a mutant, and of course I'm not a human. I come from Saturn Titan. To put it simply, I'm an alien, and your brother brought me here." Alien. Scarlet Witch was stunned when she heard this. Obviously, she felt that Suke was joking. Seeing this, Suke didn't explain anything, but continued, "So what are you going to do now? Your brother is waiting for you at the mutant school. Do you need me to take you there?" "Of course." Scarlet Witch spoke without any hesitation, and then he thought of something and asked nervously, "My brother, is he okay?" "It should be fine. I just accidentally inhaled some Hydra's anesthetic gas before. I will be fine after a while of sleep. Here, you can see for yourself," Suke said, and opened the space channel leading to the mutant school. After crossing the space channel, the two of them instantly came to the medical room of the mutant school, and at this time, Quicksilver was still sleeping. "Is he okay?" Suke looked at the nurse beside him and asked. "It's okay, he's just in a coma, he will be fine when he wakes up tomorrow morning." The nurse checked Quicksilver again, then looked at Suke. Nodding first, Suke suddenly thought of something, then looked at the Scarlet Witch on the side and said, "By the way, do you want to check your body too?" "No, I'm fine." Scarlet Witch shook her head gently, then looked at Quicksilver. "Come on, I'll take you to rest. When you get up tomorrow, he'll be fine," Suke said, and led the way again. But after walking out of the medical room, Suke found that the atmosphere in the school was a little weird. It was already night, but the lights were still on, and it was a little scary how quiet it was. What happened? Suke thought with some surprise. The next second, the door not far away was suddenly slammed open, and then Wolverine fell to the ground in embarrassment. Then, a middle-aged man wearing a helmet walked in slowly. Just one glance at him, Suke recognized his identity. Magneto. Magneto's real name is Eric Landshair. He is a powerful mutant who can control the Earth's magnetic field and use it to make himself fly. He has been a friend of Professor X for many years. He parted ways with Professor X for human reasons and founded the Brotherhood of Mutants. Because of the cruelty of World War II and the crazy attack of humans on mutants, Magneto hates humans very much, and has repeatedly fought with the X-Men who tried to stop him, the Avengers and other superhero teams as enemies. It is worth mentioning that Magneto's ability is not actually to control metals, this is only a small part of his ability. He can control the electromagnetic field of the entire Earth and manipulate it to achieve a variety of different effects at the same time. He can use magnetism to subdue the army, raise islands from the bottom of the sea, move mountains, change the direction of rivers, and threaten to destroy the world with floods and earthquakes. It can be said that Magneto can control any form of magnetic field to an almost infinite degree. Suke was somewhat surprised. He didn't expect to meet Magneto here. Is this guy here to recognize his son and daughter? It doesn't make sense. I just rescued Scarlet Witch, and this guy arrived right after. This is obviously unscientific. Just as he was thinking about it, Magneto slowly walked in, then looked at Wolverine on the ground and said, Logan, you are still as stupid as before. When will you realize that you can never defeat me? There is no doubt that Wolverine is a powerful mutant, but when facing Magneto, Wolverine is always completely restrained, because Magneto can control the Amanda metal in his body, which makes him unable to get close to Magneto at all. Eric, why did you come here? You should know that you are not welcome here. Then, Hank and others came in from outside, helping Wolverine up and said, everyone looked nervous. Don't get me wrong, I'm not here to look for you this time, I'm here to look for Charles. I've heard about the Mutant Registration Act before, and I have to say, Charles is really beyond my expectations. I didn't expect him to reject humans and threaten humans. I think we can finally have a good talk now. Magneto said with a smile. In his opinion, his old friend finally got it. He finally understood that humans cannot be trusted. As long as they can join forces, mutants will usher in a brand new future. Sook was speechless. It seemed that he had thought too much. This guy didn't come here to look for his son and daughter, but to discuss with Professor X how to go to war with humans. Then at this moment, Wolverine suddenly found Sook standing not far away. What are you still standing there for? Get started. Wolverine yelled at Sook. It's true that Magneto is a powerful mutant, but Sook is an alien with superb abilities. Although they are no match for Magneto, Sook can definitely defeat him. This is not good, right? What if he accidentally kills him? Sook shrugged and said helplessly. You know, he just included Scarlet Witch in his harem list. If he accidentally crippled or killed her father in front of her, how embarrassing it would be. Magneto, Wolverine, Hank. Everyone looked at Sook in silence, especially Magneto, whose sharp eyes made him want to skin Sook alive. Who is this guy? Is he a mutant? Magneto looked at Hank and asked, his tone full of uncontrollable anger. No, he is. That's right. Before Hank could finish his words, Magneto suddenly waved his hand violently. In an instant, the whole room suddenly trembled, and then countless iron objects began to condense in the air, and then turned into sharp iron spikes. If you were a mutant, maybe I would spare you, but you are not even a mutant, so I cannot forgive you. After saying this with a cold look in his eyes, Magneto clenched his fists fiercely, and then the iron spikes in the sky began to stab towards Sook. Wolverine and others were not worried at all at this moment, they even wanted to laugh, because everyone knew that Magneto was going to be in big trouble. Although Sook found Magneto's attack a little funny, he still stretched out his hand and grabbed the air. In an instant, the space was broken, a black hole appeared, and all the iron spikes sank into the black hole. Then, before Magneto could react, Sook came to Magneto, opened a space channel in the air, and threw him in. At the other end of the space channel was a space. All this was done almost instantly. When Wolverine and the others reacted, they only saw that Sook was standing in front of them. There was a space channel in the air, which was filled with endless space, and Magneto was floating in the space. Although they already knew that Magneto would not be a match for Sook, Wolverine and the others did not expect that Sook would defeat Magneto in an instant and throw him directly into space. This was really too incredible for them. Magneto actually knelt down in a second. Outside the gate, the mutants brought by Magneto were also stunned. Their boss was killed in an instant. Sook, stop, don't kill him. Then at this moment, Mystique finally appeared. The moment she appeared, she shouted anxiously. At this moment, Magneto, who was floating in space, was about to die due to extreme cold and lack of oxygen. In fact, even without Mystique's reminder, Sook would not kill Magneto. After all, this guy will become his father-in-law in the future. If he really kills him, Scarlet Witch will not be able to explain. With a snap of his fingers, Magneto, who was floating in the air, suddenly fell through the space channel and fell heavily to the ground. Wolverine wanted to go up and stab him, but was blocked by Mystique. Logan, forget it. Believe me, after the lesson just now, he won't mess around again. After hearing this, Logan retracted his steel claws in dismay, and then went with Hank to comfort the students who were panicked by Magneto's arrival. Anyway, with Sook here, Magneto will never dare to mess around again, unless he wants to be thrown into space by Sook. Who are you exactly? Magneto asked with a stammer as he climbed up from the ground tremblingly. The reason for the stuttering was not because he was afraid, but because it was too cold in space and he couldn't speak clearly. It is conceivable that if he had been a little later, he would have really died. Before Sook could answer, Mystique on the side threw a blanket to Magneto, and then said, "Don't get me wrong, he is neither a human nor a mutant, he is an alien, believe me Eric, don't mess with him again, if he really wants to kill you, you will definitely not have a chance to resist." Sook smiled slightly, it was really comfortable to hear this. When Magneto heard this, he looked at Sook in surprise again. Obviously, he didn't expect Sook to be an alien. At the same time, Scarlet Witch, who was standing not far away, was also surprised, because she didn't expect that what Sook said before would be true. Anyway, after what happened just now, Magneto behaved himself for a long time. He drank a cup of hot tea and calmed down. Then he looked at Mystique and asked, "Raven, where is Charles? I have something to talk to him about. Believe me, I have no ill intentions this time." "I know." After nodding first, Mystique said, "But you came at an untimely time. He went out for something today." "Out? Where did he go?" "I don't know, but I heard that he went to look for his son." "I don't know where this guy got his son," Mystique said helplessly. "Really?" When Magneto heard this, he just felt a little funny in his heart, but then he shook his head helplessly. It seemed that he still didn't have a child. Obviously, he didn't know about the existence of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. "What? You said Magneto is my father? The man just now?" After listening to Sook's story, Scarlet Witch jumped up from the bed with an incredible look on her face. Sook lay comfortably on the bed, and then said lightly, "Yes, if you don't believe it, you can go and ask him in person. If it weren't for you, I might have killed him just now. Because of me." When Scarlet Witch heard this, she was stunned for a moment, and then her face turned red again. See all sangtakviet.tk. In addition, Sook is an alien with powerful power and mystery. Out of curiosity, Scarlet Witch has a stronger sense of infatuation with Sook. And Sook made it clear that the reason why he let Magneto go just now was just because he was his father. Isn't this a manifestation of Sook caring about her? For a while, Scarlet Witch felt sweet in her heart. But after the sweetness, she was a little doubtful. That is, could Magneto really be her father? Just thinking about it, Sook suddenly walked down from the bed again, and then said to her, "Okay, Wanda, you stay here with me tonight, and wait until your brother wakes up tomorrow to talk about the future." "What are you going to do tonight?" Seeing that Suke was about to leave, Scarlet Witch couldn't help feeling disappointed, but then, she suddenly realized that she shouldn't have said these words, and her face turned red again. Looking at the beautiful Scarlet Witch in front of him, Suke's heart was also rippled, and he also understood the Scarlet Witch's intentions, but then again, it has only been a few hours since the two met, isn't this a bit too fast? Besides, this is a mutant school, and Jean lives not far from him. Suke dare not act so blatantly. Not to mention that Suke had already had several in-depth conversations with Jean during the day, so he decided to wait and see about Scarlet Witch. Anyway, the Scarlet Witch is definitely his, and she will be eaten by him sooner or later. Thinking of this, Suke smiled and said, "Don't worry, I have a place to stay here, you can rest here with peace of mind, and we can talk about it tomorrow if there is anything." Well then, seeing this, Scarlet Witch couldn't say anything more, and she really needed some private space to digest what Suke had said before. There was something about Magneto being her father. After leaving his room, Sook immediately walked towards Jean's room. Although the mutant school did not allow boys and girls to live together, who dared to control Sook? If someone dared to say anything, Sook would not mind throwing that person into space to let him calm down. Boom boom boom. Knocking gently on the door, Suke whispered, "Chin, are you there?" "Not here." Chin's somewhat angry voice came from inside the room. Suke felt amused and walked in immediately. He saw Chin lying on the bed wrapped up like a dumpling. He didn't know what was going on. "What's wrong? Who made you angry again? Tell me and I'll teach them a lesson," Suke said, pulling back the quilt, and then Chin looked unhappy. "Who else is there besides you? Tell me, who is that woman next to you? Teacher Ruiwin is right, you men are always fickle," Chin said angrily. "Please, you misunderstood me, okay? Do you remember Quicksilver, the guy who ran very fast? Didn't he ask me to save his sister before? That's his sister. It was his first time here and she didn't know anyone, so she followed me," Sook said with a smile. When Chin heard this, her face instantly became much better, but she still asked uncertainly, is what you said true? Of course, I just gave my room to her, otherwise why would I come here? Speaking of this, Suke took off his shoes and socks without any hesitation, and then jumped onto the bed. Chin blushed and said, what do you want to do? This is a school. If the teachers find out, it will be very troublesome. What are you afraid of? Suke said nonchalantly while holding Chin. If anyone dares to talk nonsense, I will make him go to space for a spin. You are such a scoundrel. Chin cursed with a red face, but her body could not help shrinking into Suke's arms. For a moment, the wolf in Suke's heart began to move again. Then, another good show started. Early the next morning. When Suk woke up, Jin was still sleeping. Considering that Jin was a bit tired last night, Suk did not disturb him. At this time, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch had also woken up and were eating breakfast in the restaurant. In addition to them, Magneto was also there, but it was obvious that the children and teachers in the school did not like him and kept a distance from him. Suk was too lazy to pay attention to Magneto, and directly brought breakfast and gin to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and then sat down. Seeing Suk's arrival, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch both showed a friendly expression. Thank you so much for what you did yesterday. If it weren't for you, we siblings wouldn't have been reunited so soon. Thank you. Quicksilver looked at Suk with gratitude. Scarlet Witch said nothing, but nodded to Suk with a red face. Suk smiled and said, you're welcome. This kind of thing is just a piece of cake for me. It's no big deal. But, aren't you going to recognize him? Suk said, pointing at Magneto who was eating breakfast with a spoon. Hearing this, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch's faces changed slightly. Quicksilver sneered, what is there to recognize? He may not even know of our existence. Is there such a father in the world? Scarlet Witch still didn't speak, but Suk could see that she also hated Magneto. Seeing this, Suk didn't say anything. After all, this was a family affair between Magneto, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and he couldn't interfere. Then, just as Suk was about to say something, there was a sudden noise outside, which instantly attracted everyone's attention. It's the professor. The professor is back, and he brought back a child. It seems that he is his son. Son? How come the professor also has a son? I don't know, but that guy looks pretty handsome. Then, a sound suddenly rang out from outside. Suke smiled slightly. He knew that Professor X had found his son, an Omega mutant named Dakin. Chapter 71. The real name of the group is David Charles Haller. He is the son of Professor X, Charles Xavier, an Omega-level mutant, and a severe multiple personality disorder patient. He can absorb the consciousness of others and has thousands of personalities and thousands of abilities. He can constantly send different personalities to fight. In simple terms, this guy can possess the power and personality of anyone he absorbs consciousness from. But of course, at this time, the group is far from mastering his own abilities, because he is just a little kid of 15 or 16 years old. Eric, why are you here? Professor X was immersed in the joy of finding his son, but he didn't expect to see Magneto when he came back, and his face suddenly darkened. Charles, can you stand up? When Magneto saw Professor X, he was also a little surprised. This is none of your business. What are you doing here? You are not welcome here. Professor X said to Magneto with a stern face while asking Hank to take care of the large group. Magneto was not angry, but just smiled and said, don't be like this, old friend. I am not here to cause trouble this time. I have something very important to talk to you about, but before that, I have to congratulate you on finding your son. You're welcome. I know what you want to talk about. Yes, your son and daughter are here, but if they don't want to leave with you, I won't let you take them away. Professor X said slowly, looking at Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch not far behind Magneto. Although he had never seen Scarlet Witch, he already knew that she was Quicksilver's sister. But when Magneto heard this, he was a little overwhelmed. He said in surprise, Charles, what are you talking about? Where did my son and daughter come from? This joke is not funny at all. Huh, Professor X was stunned at first, then asked curiously, why don't you know yet? Know what? Magneto was completely confused by Professor X. It was also at this time that Professor X finally figured it out. It turned out that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch had not planned to recognize Magneto. With an awkward smile, Professor X said again, "Nothing, just pretend I didn't say anything." Although they didn't know why Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch didn't want to recognize Magneto, it was obvious that this was Magneto's own family affair, and as an outsider, it was not easy for him to interfere. But at this time, Magneto had completely understood the meaning of Professor X's words just now. "Charles, are you saying that I have a son and a daughter? And they are here now? Please, you have to explain this to me clearly." Magneto began to get a little excited. Looking at his old friend's appearance, Professor X couldn't hide anything anymore, so he could only say slowly, "They are not far behind you." Although this is a little hard to believe, Eric, this is true. If you want to try to be a father, then change yourself. After saying this, Professor X walked away without looking back. Magneto was a little surprised at first, and then he remembered what Professor X had just said. He turned around in an instant, and then Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, who were looking at him not far away, suddenly appeared in his sight. Seeing this, Suke just smiled slightly, because he knew that a drama of father and son recognizing each other would soon be staged here. However, he had no interest in this matter and went directly to Professor X's office. Since he found his son, Professor X was really in high spirits. When he saw Suke coming in, he said excitedly, "Suke, thank you so much for this. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't know that I have a son. And you were right, he is indeed an Omega mutant, and his power is stronger than mine." "It's okay, it's just a piece of cake," Suke said with a smile, not taking it to heart at all. Then, Professor X seemed to have thought of something, and said helplessly, "But to be honest, I didn't expect Eric to come here. This guy shouldn't have done anything bad, right? He wanted to do it, but he became much more obedient after I threw him into space for a while." Space. Professor X was speechless at first, but then he was relieved because it was obvious that as long as Sook was there, the mutant school was absolutely safe. After a brief thought, Professor X said, "Originally, this matter was between mutants and humans. I didn't want you to get involved, but now it seems that you have been involved. If mutants really go to war with humans, then I would like to ask you for a favor." Professor X said, his tone began to become a little cautious. "Speak," Suke said slowly. Looking at Suke with a tough face, Professor X said, "Don't let us destroy each other." Suke was somewhat speechless. He had said before that Professor X was not a saintly fool. Isn't this still a saintly fool? Isn't war just destruction? Without destruction, how can there be victory? After a while of complaining in his heart, Suke nodded on the surface, but in his heart, he was looking forward to the arrival of war. Compared to before, Suke has become more and more like a villain. Crunch. Then at this moment, the door of the room was pushed open, and then Magneto walked in. However, seeing his disappointed face, Suke knew that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch definitely did not recognize him. As for what Professor X was going to discuss with Magneto next, it was nothing more than Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, or the matter of jointly attacking humans. Suke had no interest in such things. He greeted Professor X, and then walked out. When passing by Magneto, Magneto's body suddenly paused slightly, and then said to Suke, "Thank you for saving my daughter." Suke just smiled and ignored him. If anyone else dared to ignore him like this, Magneto would definitely be furious, but facing Suke, he dared not get angry at all. After all, Suke was a man who could knock him to his knees in an instant. After coming out, Suke went straight to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and asked them where they were going, whether they were going to leave with Magneto or stay in the mutant school. Since Professor X rejected the mutant registration bill, the mutant school is no longer safe. Suke also talked about this issue with Jean last night. He wanted Jean to move to New York City and live with him, so that even if humans really went to war with mutants, they would not hurt her. But Jean, who was always gentle, was very firm at that moment, saying that she was also a mutant and could not just stay out of it. Suke had no choice but to let her go. Anyway, he had the space gem, and he could get there as soon as possible no matter what danger Jean was in. Hearing Suke's question, Quicksilver directly said that he would live in the mutant school. Anyway, he had not decided to recognize Magneto yet, and would not leave with him. Scarlet Witch was somewhat hesitant, then she looked at Suke and said, "What about you? Where are you going to live? Suke smiled and said, of course I still live in New York City. After all, I prefer big cities to here. Wanda, if you don't want to live here, you can leave with me. Anyway, my house is big and you can definitely live there. Scarlet Witch was very happy to hear this, but when she saw Quicksilver beside her, she finally softened her heart. I'd better live here with my brother. If mutants and humans really go to war, then maybe I can help by staying here. Although Scarlet Witch did not accept Sook's invitation, it didn't matter to Sook. There would be plenty of time in the future anyway, so there was no need to care about this moment. Eating Wanda is a matter of time. After saying goodbye to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, Sook went to find Jean again. After a while, Sook came to the villa in New York City this time. After all, mutants and humans can't fight each other just by saying so Sook didn't need to stay there all the time. When he came to the yard, Sook saw Emma sitting by the swimming pool and chatting with someone from a distance. Upon closer inspection, it was the Black Widow. Why is this guy here? Curious, Sook walked over. Honey, you are finally back. Agent Natasha has been waiting for you for a long time. You guys chat, I'm going to get busy. Emma knew that Black Widow must have important business in coming to Sook, so she greeted Sook and then went into the house. She lay down comfortably on the chair next to her, and Sook looked at Black Widow and said, tell me, why did you come to me? What, can't I come to see you when I'm okay? Black Widow said with a smile. That's not the case. If you still want to continue our previous relationship, then I'd still welcome you. After all, having a beauty like you as a maid is always a very enjoyable thing. Sook's eyes swept over the Black Widow and said with a hint of teasing in his voice. The Black Widow rolled her eyes at Sook first, and then said, forget it, I'm not kidding you. I'm not here for anything else this time, but for the mutants. The matter about the previous Mutant Registration Act is now known to everyone, and the conflict between mutants and humans is getting deeper and deeper. What I want to know is, if humans really go to war with mutants, which side will you stand on? In the previous New York battle, Sook finally showed his complete strength. It was a power that was so powerful that it was unbelievable. If Sook chose to stand on the side of mutants in the future war between humans and mutants, then humans would definitely fail, and even be extinct. The Black Widow wanted to know Sook's attitude on this matter. But when he heard this, Sook smiled faintly, and then said, did Nick ask you to ask me this? I guess so, but I do want to know your attitude. Black Widow admitted. After taking a sip of the champagne beside him, Sook said, actually, I have no interest in things like war, and I don't really want to interfere in your affairs. However, if this matter involves people around me, then I will definitely not stand idly by. So, will you still stand on the side of the mutants in the end? Black Widow sighed and said, feeling a little heavy. That's not the case. After all, if there were no humans in this world, it would be a very boring thing. I don't like war, and I hate boredom. Sook said again. So which side will you stand on? Black Widow was completely speechless. Wasn't it the same as Sook saying nothing? Guess. Sook smiled. Obviously, S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted Black Widow to find out Sook's attitude towards this matter, and then formulate a corresponding plan against mutants. But Sook is not a fool, he will not let S.H.I.E.L.D. completely understand his attitude. As a villain, it is very important to maintain a sense of mystery. At this point, Black Widow knew that Sook would definitely not tell her his attitude, and she had no choice but to say goodbye. Looking at the departing figure of Black Widow, Sook suddenly showed a smile at the corner of his mouth, because he knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. must be busy again. Just like that, after 3 days of relatively quiet life, Tony called again. Hello, Sook, I am researching something very powerful with Banner, are you interested? As soon as the call was connected, Tony shouted excitedly. Not interested. After rejecting directly, Sook was ready to hang up the phone. Don't hang up. You haven't heard what I said yet. Please, give me some face, okay? Seeing that Sook was about to hang up the phone, Tony suddenly became anxious. Sook was speechless and could only say, I'll give you 1 minute. Very good. Tony smiled first, then said, to put it simply, this is about artificial intelligence. We call it Project Ultron. Sook had no interest in what Tony said next, because when he heard the word Ultron, he knew that Tony was courting death again. Among all the villains in the Avengers, there is one enemy that they can never completely eliminate, and it is evolving all the time. This enemy is none other than Ultron in Tony's mouth. Ultron is an artificial intelligence created and designed by Iron Man Tony Stark and Hulk Bruce Banner. Its original role was to manage the supervillains arrested by the superheroes and to monitor anything that could threaten the safety of the Earth. Later, Ultron became bad after he had his own thinking and consciousness. He improved his simple design in the laboratory and created many more advanced bodies after many upgrades. He once created a large number of various types of machines. After that, he had a mechanical body made of adamantium and super trauma healing ability, and was able to self-update the program according to the characteristics of the opponent to evolve a powerful ability to restrain the opponent. Ultron has been committed to destroying all life on the Earth and the Avengers who hinder him. After being defeated by the Avengers, he has repeatedly revived, bringing endless death and destruction to the Earth. It can be called the lingering nightmare of the Avengers. That's right, at this moment, Tony and Banner are creating such a powerful enemy. Suke was a little speechless. Just when he was about to say something, the system's voice rang again. Ding! New main quest now released. Assist Tony Stark and Bruce Banner in creating Ultron. Reward: 500,000 villain points and one chance to win a prize. Suke was speechless. He had just advised Tony to stop, but he didn't expect the system to issue such a task again, and even asked him to help create Ultron. This is really bad. Hey, are you listening? Just say something. This is a great invention, okay? Tony was still very excited on the other end of the phone. You're going to die. After cursing in his heart, Suke hung up the phone, then opened a space channel and appeared in Stark Building in an instant. Then, he saw Banner busy in front of a pile of data, and Tony was still talking on the phone. Okay, stop feeding me, I'm coming, Suke said as he walked to the bar and poured himself a glass of wine. Please, can you give me a heads up next time you come? Tony complained as he threw his phone aside. Seeing Suke coming, Banner also put away his work. The three of them sat down on a sofa. Tony looked at Banner excitedly and said, Banner, you see, I was right. I knew Suke would be interested. Interested? Your sister's interest. You are courting death, don't you know? Suke couldn't help cursing in his heart. But on the surface, he pretended to be very interested and asked, I want to ask, Tony, are you also going to use this thing to deal with mutants? Hee. When Tony heard this, he was a little embarrassed for a moment, then he waved his hand and said, No, don't get me wrong, this thing is just used to protect the Earth. Suke is not a fool. He immediately realized that Tony was lying, but he didn't care, because at some point in the future, Ultron would even attack humans together with mutants. Because the system had previously given Tony the task of creating Ultron, Suke knew that Ultron was inevitable. No matter how strong Ultron was, he was just a robot and was definitely not a threat to him. However, for the entire Avengers, it was a huge threat. But obviously, Tony and Banner had not realized this yet. Suke suddenly felt that watching these two guys commit suicide was also a very interesting thing. Okay, tell me, what do you need me to do? Suke said straight to the point. Good, since you are so straightforward, I will not say any more nonsense. Banner and I have created a brand new all-powerful artificial intelligence. To this end, we have input almost all the knowledge on Earth into it. But we also know that this is not enough. After all, our enemies are not only from Earth, but may even come from outer space. So I want you to input all your knowledge about outer space. Tony felt a little embarrassed at the end. But at this moment, Suke couldn't help laughing. Although he knew that Tony was courting death, he didn't expect that this guy would do it so thoroughly and so powerfully that he actually asked him to give Ultron all his knowledge about the Eternals. Was he going to let Ultron dominate the entire universe and become a cosmic villain? Are you serious? Suke looked at Tony and Banner helplessly and said. Of course I am serious. Believe us, the appearance of Ultron will definitely shock the whole world. This will be a revolution. Banner vowed. Revolution. Yes, but I am afraid it will be Ultron's revolution. Shaking his head slightly, Suke said, everything else is easy to talk about, except this one. Why? Tony asked with some confusion. You will know later. Suke did not explain anything, but just spoke lightly. Then, he no longer paid attention to Banner and Tony, but opened another space channel and left. Although the system had previously issued a task to help create Ultron, it did not say how to help, so in Suke's view, even if he went over to meet him, it would be considered helping. Anyway, his heart is not as big as Tony and Banner. In his opinion, these two guys are just courting death, and they will cry when the time comes. After leaving Stark Tower, Suke did not rush back, but strolled around New York City. Thinking carefully, it seems that he has not been so relaxed for a long time recently. After strolling for a while, Suke found a Western restaurant and had a nice lunch. When Suke walked out of the Western restaurant, just as he was thinking about where to go next, two figures blocked his way. Don't move. Robbery. Don't move. Robbery. As the voice sounded, Suke raised his head in surprise. Then, he saw two tall men blocking him, one of them holding a pistol. Robbery. Seriously. Suke almost laughed out loud. He didn't expect that someone would dare to rob him. Just as he was about to kill the two guys, his heart suddenly moved again. It seemed that there was nothing to do at the moment, so he might as well play with them. Come with us, don't play any tricks, otherwise the bullets have no eyes, said the gangster with a gun, and asked Suke to walk into an alley next to him. Suke felt funny in his heart, but he didn't show it on the surface. Instead, he pretended to be a little scared and said, Don't shoot, I'll give you whatever you want. Boy, take out everything on you now. After entering the alley, the gangster with a gun yelled at Suke again, and the other gangster also stared at Suke with a ferocious look on his face. It seemed that if Suke didn't want to, he would do it himself. I would like to give it to you, but I don't have anything valuable on me. The most valuable thing seems to be this set of clothes on me, do you want it? If you want it, I'll take it off for you now. Suke said with a smile. You little brat, who are you trying to fool? We all saw you coming out of that Western restaurant just now. How can someone who eats there be without money? Don't try to fool us. Hurry up and take out the money, or we will not be polite. The gangster with the gun said angrily. You must have seen it wrong. If you don't believe me, take another look. Suke said, and his mind moved again. Then he put everything in his pocket into the system space, and then slowly opened his pocket. The two gangsters were completely dumbfounded when they saw it. This poor guy was even cleaner than their pockets. Did I see it wrong just now? Impossible. The two criminals grumbled in their hearts, but they felt helpless. Okay, you little fool, get out of here right now. It's my bad luck to meet a poor guy like you. The gunman waved his hand and said impatiently. What, are you guys not going to rob anymore? Suke asked, pretending to be a little curious. You don't have any money, what's the point of fighting? Get out of here. The two gangsters said, becoming more and more impatient. Very good, since you don't want to rob, it's my turn now, don't move. I want to rob. Suke said, and suddenly a cunning smile appeared on his face. What? When the two gangsters heard this, they were stunned at first, and then they couldn't help laughing wildly. Ha 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 ha, you little brat, have you been scared by us so much that you even forgot who the robber is? Get out of here. If you keep talking nonsense, I will really kill you. The gunman laughed, thinking that Suke was scared by them. So you guys are unwilling to take out the money. Don't blame me for not warning you, the consequences are very serious. Suke said, with a deeper smile on his face. In his opinion, the game has reached this point, and it's time to end it. Then, he stretched out his hand, ready to snap his fingers to get rid of the two guys. Brat, you. The gunman was about to say something when suddenly a glowing rope fell from the sky and was put around him. Then he was hung in the air like a dead pig. What? This sudden change instantly made the other gangster panic. But before he could finish his words, a beautiful figure suddenly fell from the sky and knocked him unconscious with a punch. Then, a very heroic-looking woman in a battlesuit suddenly appeared in front of Suke. Wonder Woman Diana. At this moment, Suke is still ready to snap his fingers. Staring at Diana in front of him, Suke was speechless, very, very speechless. Wonder Woman's original name is Diana Prince. She is the princess of the Amazons of Paradise Island. She is the illegitimate daughter of Zeus, the king of the Olympian gods, and Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons of Paradise Island. She has demigod blood and is immortal. She is the princess and heir to the throne of the Amazons, a fighting nation that only has women. She is also one of the 7 founders of the Justice League. Meeting Diana was originally a very happy thing, but Suke was not happy at all at this moment, because Diana just stole his limelight. If it was any other hero, Suk would have thrown him into space, but facing Diana, he couldn't do it. What the hell is going on? This is so embarrassing. You're welcome. Then, when Diana said this to Suke with a smile, Suke was even more speechless. Who is being polite to you? Seeing Diana was about to leave, Suke immediately shouted, wait a minute. What's wrong? Diana turned around and looked at Suke curiously and said, if you want to thank me, then there's no need. This is what I should do. After being in the Marvel Universe for a few months, I have to say that this is the most speechless day for Suk. If Tony knew about this, I'm afraid he would laugh his teeth off. Hey, sighing helplessly, Suke said, please Diana, I don't need you to save me at all. These 2 guys were supposed to be mine, but you got them first. How do you know my name? Diana frowned when she heard this. You know, people in this world generally only know her code name Wonder Woman, and only her friends and relatives know the name Diana. Now the man in front of her actually called out her name, how could she not be surprised? Suke was silent at first, just stared at the 2 gangsters on the ground, and then sighed. He was not in the mood to kill. Opening a space channel casually, Suke kicked them into the New York City Police Department one by one. Then, he looked at Diana in front of him and said, I not only know your name, I also know where you are from. I know everything about you. With Suke's actions and words just now, Diana suddenly realized that the man in front of her was not an ordinary man. Who are you? When Diana looked at Suke again, her eyes finally became cautious. Just like you, someone who doesn't belong to this world. Suke smiled and didn't directly answer Diana's question. Diana's heart sank and she whispered, the power you just displayed seems to be more than just opening a channel. You can control space. This is not a power that humans should have. Are you a god? God, you can say that, Suk said with a smile. Even a guy like Thor Loki can be called a god. It seems that he is more than qualified to be a god. At the same time, he was a little surprised. As a member of the DC Universe, Diana should not know about the space gem, but she still felt such power, which was enough to show that she was very extraordinary. Where are you from? What's your name? Diana asked again. My name is Suke. As for where I come from, I think you wouldn't know even if I told you. But I'm curious, Diana, what are you doing in New York? Wonder Woman from the DC Universe actually ran to Marvel's New York. This is really surprising. Suke was a little curious. It's a war, Diana said slowly. I felt there would be a war here on Paradise Island before, so I came here, but obviously, I came a little late. When I got here, the war was over. Obviously, Diana was talking about the previous Battle of New York. Suke felt funny when he heard this. If Diana had come earlier, Tony would definitely invite her to join the Avengers, but if she really joined the Avengers, then what would DC do? So where are you going next? Back to Paradise Island? Suke asked again. No, Diana shook her head and said, although the war here is over, I have a feeling that a war is brewing in another place. It will be a very cruel war. I must stop it. A cruel war, etc. Superman vs. Batman. Almost instantly, Suke knew what Diana was talking about. If Diana hadn't reminded him, he would have almost forgotten what was going on in Gotham City. Thinking about it carefully, it seems that the duel between Batman and Superman is really about to begin. I have to say, there have been a lot of these things happening recently. Suk, nice to meet you, but I'm sorry, I have to leave now. I hope we can meet again in the future. Next, Diana was ready to leave. To be honest, after all, he had finally met Diana, but now he had to leave. Suke was really reluctant to leave. However, no matter how reluctant he was, Diana was a superhero in the DC Universe, and she really needed him there. Well, you are lucky to have met me, I will take you there. After saying this, Suke's mind moved again, and then, a space channel appeared beside him, and on the other side, it was Gotham City. If I'm not mistaken, this is the city where the war you predicted happened. Good luck to you, Suke said with a smile. Thank you. Diana smiled at Suke and walked in. Staring at Diana's gradually disappearing figure, Suke touched his chin thoughtfully. Diana is also a beauty, and a female warrior. I wonder what it feels like to be in bed with such a woman. After saying goodbye to Diana, Suke did not rush back, but continued to wander aimlessly. Not long after, a room that looked a little strange suddenly appeared in front of him. Isn't this the New York Temple? How did I get here? Suke thought with some surprise. That's right, what appeared in front of him at this moment was not some other place, but the New York Temple, one of the 3 great temples of the Supreme Sorcerer. Thinking of Ji Yuyi's stinky face, Suke instantly lost interest in continuing to wander around. Just as he was about to open the space channel to go back, he suddenly thought of something. Why not get the Time Stone of Ancient One? Before, he and Ancient One were about the same strength, so he had never thought of this, but the current situation was obviously different. After absorbing the power of the Sentinels, he was several times stronger than before. With the power of the Space Stone and the Mind Stone, was he still afraid that he could not defeat Ancient One? Besides, according to the original timeline, Ancient One might have died a long time ago. If she died, it would be easier to deal with. After all, Doctor Strange was much easier to deal with than Ancient One. Thinking of this, Suke sneered in his heart again, and then walked over. It is worth mentioning that this temple is not where the Ancient One lives, but just a contact point on the earth. The place where the Ancient One lives is called Kamar Taj, a holy place located in the Himalayas. However, Suke did not know where exactly Kamar Taj was in the Himalayas, so he could only come to this temple to find her. Anyway, there is a portal leading directly to Kamar Taj in each temple, and it only takes a few minutes to see the Ancient One. When he walked to the door, Suke looked up and saw a not very conspicuous sign on the roof. According to his previous understanding, he knew that this was the sign of the magician. As an existence that has been protecting the multiverse for a long time, the magicians of the lineage of the Ancient One have existed on the earth for thousands of years. Similarly, the temple in front of him also has a history of thousands of years. Thousands of years of history, it can be regarded as a cultural relic. I hope that the Ancient One can consciously hand over the Time Stone later, otherwise this temple with thousands of years of history will be destroyed in his hands. A smile flashed across Suke's mouth. Gently pushing open the door, Suke saw a long corridor, simple and quiet. Is anyone there? Although he came here for the Time Stone, Suke decided to use courtesy before force, so when he came in, he still shouted. But unfortunately, no one responded to him. Walking in the empty hall, Suke was speechless. This place was a temple after all, right? Shouldn't someone be sent to guard it? How come he had been here for so long, and no one came out to greet him? Where was Ancient One? Where was Doctor Strange? Where was Wong? Did all these guys die or something? As far as he knew, each temple had a full-time guard wizard, whose duty was to protect and guard the place, but the current situation seemed a little wrong. Then, just as Suke was about to reach the stairs, a voice finally rang out. Sir, you have come to the wrong place. This is not a store or anything like that. Please leave immediately. Then, a monk came down from upstairs and looked at Suke calmly. It was obvious that he seemed to think that Suke was just an ordinary person who had strayed here. Where is Ji Yuyi? I want to see him. Suke was too lazy to talk nonsense with the monk and directly stated his purpose. Hearing this, the monk suddenly became a little surprised, because the name Ji Yuyi was not known to just anyone. It can be seen that this man did not come here by mistake, he had a purpose. Who are you? What is your purpose in coming here? And why do you know Master Ji Yuyi? As the monk spoke, his eyes suddenly became serious. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that you better tell me where Ancient One is, or your temple will be destroyed soon. Suke said with a smile on his face. How dare you? Where do you think this place is? No matter who you are, you'd better leave quickly, or don't blame me for being rude. The monk said, and suddenly made a gesture ready to attack. Although he had never seen Suke before, according to his intuition, the man in front of him was definitely not an ordinary person. He was not joking just now. However, facing this monk, Suk did not pay any attention to him, and even sat down on the sofa beside him. Then he looked at his watch and said, "I'll give you 3 minutes. If Ancient One does not appear within 3 minutes, I will destroy this place, of course, the other 2 temples, and finally I will destroy Kamar Taj." How outrageous! Hearing this, the monk couldn't bear it anymore, and rushed towards Suk with a roar, and a golden halo suddenly appeared in his hand. This monk was obviously a lowest level wizard. Suk had no interest in fighting him. He just waved his hand casually, and then a space channel appeared in front of the monk, and then several hungry wolves rushed out at once. What kind of operation is this? When had the monk seen such a scene before? He was a little confused at the time, but then he reacted quickly, and then pounced on the hungry wolves and started fighting. Suk looked at his watch indifferently and said, 2.5 minutes left. What's going on? Why is it so noisy here? Then there was another male voice suddenly coming from upstairs, and then a man appeared in front of Suk. Just at a glance, Suk recognized his identity. Baron Mordo. Baron Mordo's real name is Karl Mordo. He is the eldest disciple of the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One and the senior brother of Doctor Strange. He is ambitious and has always wanted to replace his master, the Supreme Sorcerer, and he wants to kill his master. After his junior brother Doctor Strange succeeded to the throne, he has been an enemy of him and his friends, the Avengers. He walked downstairs with a frown. When he saw that his monk was actually fighting with several wolves, Baron Mordo was instantly a little surprised. Then, his eyes fell on Suk, who was resting on the side. "Who are you?" Suk had no intention of paying attention to other people, but when he saw Baron Mordo, he suddenly had an idea. Standing up, Suk looked at Baron Mordo with a smile and said, "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that I can help you achieve your goal, make you the real master here, and become the Supreme Sorcerer. I can even help you kill the bald guy you always wanted to kill." "You, what nonsense are you talking about?" Baron Mordo's face changed and he yelled at Suke. You know, what Suke said before were the darkest thoughts and secrets in his heart, which he had always kept deep in his heart. He didn't expect that the man in front of him would suddenly point them out. How could he not be angry? If such thoughts were known by Ancient One, then everything would be ruined. "I don't want to waste time talking to you. This is not a place where anyone can run wild. Please leave quickly. If you don't leave, don't blame me for being rude," Baron Mordo said, and suddenly waved his hand at the wolves that were fighting with the monks. In an instant, the wolves disappeared. Next, Baron Mordo walked upstairs again. "Really, why do you always force me to do it?" Shaking his head helplessly, Suke's body flashed in an instant, and then suddenly appeared in front of Baron Mordo, then grabbed Baron Mordo's neck and lifted him up easily. However, at this time, Baron Mordo was not panicked at all, but sneered. "Although I don't know who you are or what kind of power you have, your power alone is no match for a magician. We can exist across dimensions." As soon as he finished speaking, the space around Suk suddenly shattered, and then turned upside down. At the same time, Mordo, who was previously pinched by Suk, suddenly sank into this broken space. Mirror world. Although he had been pulled to the mirror world by Ancient One before, Suke was still full of curiosity about this strange ability. This special ability had never been recorded even in the knowledge of the Eternal Clan. What an interesting power. In the mirror world, Baron Mordo gradually appeared behind Suk. "It's obvious that you are not my opponent at all. If you beg for mercy now, I may consider letting you go, but if you still dare to disrespect me, I will keep you trapped here until you die," Baron Mordo said arrogantly. Suk just felt funny in his heart, turned around and looked at Baron Mordo behind him and said, "I'm afraid that even your master Ancient One doesn't dare to talk to me like this. You dare to say such big words. Aren't you afraid of biting your own tongue?" After saying this, Suk didn't hesitate at all, and punched the mirror world directly. In an instant, the entire mirror world suddenly shook violently, and then it was completely shattered, and the two returned to the previous temple. This is impossible," Baron Mordo said with a look of shock. Just a simple punch shattered his mirror world in an instant. This seemed almost impossible to him. Even his master Ancient One couldn't do it. But such an impossible thing was actually done by this guy in front of him. "For me, nothing is impossible. You may have the ability to cross dimensions, but I can easily shatter dimensions. Suke said, and waved his hand gently. Then, Baron Mordo's body floated up involuntarily, and then was imprisoned in the air. You want to kill me. Don't hang up, didn't I remind you? My teacher is the supreme sorcerer, he will not let you go. Realizing that he had lost control of his body, Baron Mordo panicked. Don't worry, Suke smiled and said, why would I kill you? I still have a great use for you. In the original plot of the Marvel world, the death of Ancient One was largely related to Baron Mordo. Suke didn't want to change this. In his opinion, if Ancient One didn't die, he would always be a trouble. Then, he looked down at his watch again, and then said, you have another 30 seconds to tell me where Ancient One is now, otherwise I will destroy this place. Although I won't kill you, it's okay to throw you into an abyss. Titan, the person you were looking for is me, let go of my disciple. Before Suk finished speaking, a voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Suk turned around and saw who else could it be but Ancient One. The real boss has finally arrived. However, when Suk saw Ancient One, he couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. He casually dispersed the power of Baron Mordo, and then Suk looked at Ancient One and said, it's really disappointing, why aren't you dead yet? When Ancient One heard this, there was no emotion on his face, he just said slowly, why? Is this how all Titans greet each other? That depends on the situation. Suke smiled and said, I have always hated you. Okay, don't say anything extra. What is your purpose in coming here today? If you have nothing to do, please leave. Ancient One said, stretching out his hand and making a gesture of invitation. Suk thought about it and felt that if he directly said that the purpose of this time was for the Time Stone, Ancient One would immediately turn against him. After all, the Time Stone was the thing that Ancient One and his people had guarded during their time. Although he was not afraid of Ancient One, it was unnecessary to go to war with Ancient One right now. Thinking of this, Suk said, to put it simply, I came here for Dormammu. Dormammu. Hearing this, the expression on Ancient One's face changed instantly, and then he looked at Suk in surprise and said, you also know Dormammu? Of course, and I may know more than you. Suk said mysteriously. As a Titan, Ancient One knew that Suk should not lie. After all, with his strength, lying was unnecessary. But if Suk said that he came here just for Dormammu, then Ancient One would definitely not believe it. He must have other purposes. Thinking of this, Ancient One suddenly opened his hands and drew in the air. Soon, something similar to a portal appeared in front of Suk. Through the portal, Suk saw a mountain covered with snow and a Taoist temple on the mountain. This is Kamar Taj. Please follow me. It's really inconvenient to talk about Dormammu here. Ancient One made a gesture of invitation to Suk and said. Suk did not refuse. Anyway, he also wanted to go to Kamar Taj. Soon, the two crossed the portal and came to Kamar Taj, the Holy Land of Magicians. This is a place with a very strong ancient Chinese architectural style. The pavilions and attics reveal a Chinese style everywhere, making Suk feel as if he had traveled through time. When Suk and Ancient One appeared here, the monks who were guarding the holy places hurriedly bowed to Ancient One, their faces full of respect, but for Suk, their eyes were more vigilant. But at this time, Suk was too lazy to pay attention to these guys, and walked in directly with Ancient One. Soon, a large group of people who were practicing magic in the square appeared in front of Suk. His eyes swept across the faces of these people one by one, and Suk said, Master Ancient One, do you have a person named Stephen Strange here? Stephen Strange. When the Ancient One heard this, he suddenly stopped walking, then looked at Suk with surprise and said, I'm curious, how do you know this name? It turned out that just yesterday, a man came to Kamar Taj. This man's name was Stephen Strange. He was originally an excellent neurosurgeon. Due to a car accident, his hands could no longer use the scalpel normally. In order to heal his hands, he searched all over the world for famous doctors in vain. Desperate, he could only come to the Himalayas to seek help. As a sophisticated magician, the Ancient One took a fancy to him at first sight and determined that he would become a hero who saves the world, so he accepted him as his apprentice and prepared to teach him how to use magic through spirit and spells. The Ancient One never thought that Suk would know about this. This was really a bit beyond his expectations. Seeing Ancient One's reaction, Suke knew that Doctor Strange should be here at this moment. Then, he smiled mysteriously and said, "Don't worry about how I know this, but believe me, this guy will definitely be very powerful in the future." Ji Yuyi was speechless, and then took Suke to the place where he specially entertained guests. The two sat down face to face, and Ji Yuyi poured 2 cups of tea, one for Suke and one for himself. It was obvious that this tea was not ordinary tea, and the fragrance instantly filled the whole room. Picking up the teacup on the table, Suke took a sip, and then exclaimed, "It is really good tea. I really didn't expect that as a titan, Mr. Su actually knows how to taste tea." Ji Yuyi said slowly. Hee. Suke just smiled and didn't say anything, but in his heart, he was somewhat surprised. Because he suddenly found that Ji Yuyi seemed to be stronger than when he met him before. But then, Suke suddenly felt relieved, because if he guessed correctly, Ancient One should have begun to absorb magic from the dark dimension. It was this magic that made her powerful and even immortal. Thinking of this, Suke said slowly, "Master Ancient One, as a human being, have you lived too long? Excuse me, although the power of darkness can extend your life, the damage to your body and soul cannot be restored. If you continue like this, you will fall into darkness." When Ancient One heard this, his hand trembled, and the teacup fell to the ground and shattered. His face was full of shock. The fact that he drew power from the dark dimension has always been his biggest secret. He has never told anyone, and no one has ever known how long he has lived. But to his surprise, Suke actually told his biggest secret all of a sudden. "How did you know about this?" Ji Yuyi asked slowly, suppressing his inner surprise. "You may not believe this, but I know almost everything, including yours. I even know when you will die. If you want to know, I can tell you." Suke smiled, still with a calm face. If someone else said this, Ji Yuyi would definitely not believe it, but when Suke said this, he couldn't help but believe it. During the Battle of New York, Ancient One had been observing silently, but for some special reasons, he could not take action. He knew that it was Suk who saved New York City and the Earth in that battle, and that Suk defeated and absorbed all the power of the Sentinels. She didn't even know how powerful Suk was at the moment. The only thing she knew was that if she fought Suk now, she would definitely lose. Thinking of this, Ancient One slowly said, "No need, I have already had a premonition of my own death. It is inevitable. Let's get back to the topic. You said before that you came to me because of Dormammu. Now tell me, what's going on?" After drinking another cup of tea, Suk smiled and said, "To put it simply, I actually want to make a deal with you. I will help you get rid of Dormammu, but in return, you must give me something." When Ancient One heard this, he was a little surprised at first, then he smiled bitterly and shook his head. "This is impossible, Dormammu can't be killed." But then, Ancient One suddenly thought, if Suk really couldn't do this, then why should he say it? "You mean you have a way to deal with Dormammu?" Ancient One's eyes began to show a hint of expectation. The reason why he is still alive until now is largely because of Dormammu, the king of the dark dimension. Hundreds of years ago, Ancient One encountered Dormammu for the first time. That time, he almost used up all his strength to seal Dormammu, but this was not a permanent solution. The power of the seal was always weakening. In order to prevent Dormammu from breaking out of the seal and threatening the Earth, he could only draw power from the dark dimension, because in this way he would not die. Only if he was not dead could he continue to resist Dormammu. But now, Suk actually told him that he had a way to deal with Dormammu, and might even kill him. How could he not be excited? Of course, but as I said just now, this is a deal. I will help you get rid of Dormammu, but you have to give me something. Suke looked at Ji Yuyi and said, "What is it? As long as I have it, I can give it all to you, as long as you can get rid of Dormammu." Ancient One said without any hesitation. Seeing this, Suk was not polite and said directly, "I need the Time Stone, which is your Eye of Agamotto." Eye of Agamotto. When Ancient One heard this, his face suddenly became a little ugly. He never thought that Suk wanted this thing. No, the Eye of Agamotto is a sacred object bestowed by the eternal Agamotto from another dimension. It is something we must defend with our lives. I cannot give it to you. Ji Yuyi said slowly. When Suke heard this, his eyes instantly turned cold. Sure enough, the talks broke down again. Then, just as he was considering whether to take action directly, Ji Yuyi suddenly spoke again. However, if you can really defeat Dormammu, then I can give you the Eye of Agamotto, because defeating Dormammu is more important than the Eye of Agamotto. For a moment, Suk calmed down a little, and then looked at Ji Yidao. What? Are you doubting my power? That's not the case, it's just that Dormammu is not a simple existence, but the monarch of the Dark Dimension, an existence that does not belong to this world at all. It is not easy to defeat him. The Ancient One shook his head. Suk was not angry when he heard this, but just smiled slightly, and then said, Master Ancient One, do you know the Infinity Stones? Infinity Stones. Hearing this, the Ancient One was a little surprised for a moment, and then he understood how Suk wanted to deal with Dormammu. As the Sorcerer Supreme on Earth, Ancient One certainly knew about the Infinity Gems. Even the Eye of Agamotto he possessed was the Time Gem, one of the Infinity Gems. You mean you want to use the Infinity Stones to fight Dormammu? Asked the Ancient One. That's right. To be honest, I have been collecting Infinity Stones recently. I already have the Space Stone and the Mind Stone. If I add the Time Stone in your hand, then defeating Dormammu shouldn't be a difficult task, right? Suk said with a smile, not hiding the fact that he had the Space Stone and the Mind Stone. Ancient One was silent again, because he didn't know that Suk had the Space Stone and the Mind Stone. With Suk's power, plus the power of the Infinity Stones, he could indeed defeat Dormammu. Besides, Suke didn't seem to give him a chance to refuse. As early as when he rejected Suke, he had already felt the murderous intent emanating from Suke. If she didn't hand over the Eye of Agamotto, Suk would definitely take action. And she would never be able to stop Suk. At the beginning, Suke could have taken the Time Stone by himself, but he didn't do that. Instead, he tried to get the Time Stone by making a deal with her, which showed that he didn't want to fight her at all. Of course, if she refused Suke, I'm afraid Suke would fight him in the end. Don't even mention that the Eye of Agamotto will be snatched away by Suk. I'm afraid she will die in Suk's hands. Titans are all crazy, he will definitely do this. After a short silence, Ancient One finally made a decision. I can give you the Eye of Agamotto, but in addition to defeating Dormammu, you must also promise me one thing. Ji Yuyi looked at Suke and said, Tell me about it. Seeing that Ancient One had decided to hand over the Time Stone, Suke's mood instantly improved. As the Supreme Sorcerer, I must warn you that messing with time at will is a very dangerous thing. It will cause the original timeline to split and affect the real world. So I hope that after you get the Eye of Agamotto, you will never do anything that affects the timeline. This is my request, do you agree? Ji Yuyi looked at Suke solemnly. I promise you. Without any hesitation, Suke agreed immediately. Then, Ji Yuyi stood up and took a box from the cabinet next to him. But when the box was opened, it was empty. Suke was a little curious, but when he saw Ji Yuyi's calm face, he knew that things must not be as simple as they seemed. Soon, Ji Yuyi began to recite a spell that Suke could not understand, and as his spell sounded, a special-shaped amulet-like object suddenly appeared in Suke's sight. This is the Eye of Agamotto. Now I give it to you. I hope you can keep your promise. Ji Yuyi took the Eye of Agamotto with both hands and slowly handed it to Suke. Finally, the Time Stone is mine. Resisting the excitement in his heart, Suke reached out and took the Eye of Agamotto, and then slightly exerted force in front of Ji Yuyi, and the Eye of Agamotto instantly shattered. Then, a gem-emitting green light appeared in Suke's hand. This is the Time Stone. Among all the gems, Suke wanted the Time Stone the most, because once he had the Time Stone, it was equivalent to owning time and controlling time, and time was everything. He could resurrect the dead before, restore the things that were destroyed before, and even allow himself to travel through time and space at will to change the past. In Suke's view, the Time Stone is the strongest Infinity Stone. And now, this is his thing. Looking at Suke's excited face, playing with the Time Stone in her hand, Ancient One felt a sense of loss in her heart, because she knew in her heart that she had never truly controlled the Time Stone, and she couldn't even touch the Time Stone directly. This was because human power could not control the Time Stone at all. As a powerful Titan, Suk is fully capable of controlling the Time Stone. Perhaps this kind of power should belong to people like him, right? Ancient One also had her own plans for handing the time stone to Suk. First, Suk could help deal with Dormammu, and second, Ancient One had already foreseen her own death, and this death was irreversible, which meant that she was about to die. And a long time ago, she already knew that the Earth would face many unknown dangers in the future, and these dangers were even more terrible than Dormammu, and she and her disciples alone could not resist them at all. The Earth needs a stronger force to protect it, and she has determined that Suke is such a person. I just hope Suke will not let me down. Feeling the power of the time stone in his hand, Suk was eager to find a place to get familiar with such power. Then, he suddenly stood up and looked at Ji Yi. The things are already in hand, so I won't bother you. You'd better pay more attention to the London Temple during this period. If I guess correctly, Dormammu may send Caecilius to attack there first. As long as they appear, you will notify me, and I will take care of the rest. Caecilius, he even knew this name. And he also knew which palace Dormammu would attack first. With a sense of loss in his heart, Ji Yi nodded. Then, without the slightest hesitation, Suk crossed the space channel and disappeared in Kamar Taj. According to the original timeline, Dormammu's appearance happened after Stephen Strange became Doctor Strange, and now Stephen Strange has just arrived in Kamar Taj, which means that there is about a year before Dormammu arrives. Because of this, Suk is not in a hurry at all. Next, in the endless space, with a space channel opening, Suk walked out. In the void, Suke stretched out his hand, and the time stone instantly appeared in front of him. A burst of green light emanated, as if taking him into a long river of history. In this long river of time, he saw the Avengers, the Justice League, Jean, Emma, and everyone he knew. Likewise, he also saw countless versions of himself and countless futures of himself. It was a feeling that was hard to explain. Whenever he tried to observe carefully, time would restart. This is only because he has just obtained the time stone and has not yet mastered it. After all, the power of the time stone is very strong. Even for him, it takes some time to get familiar with and master it. However, in a trance, Suke suddenly thought that since he has mastered time and has the time stone, doesn't it mean that he can also cross the time dimension at will? He can exist in any timeline, in the past and the future, and at any time. Or, he does not actually exist in any timeline, because he is time himself. Shaking his head, Suke began to feel that this was really hard to explain. Sure enough, time is the most powerful force. This kind of power cannot be explained by science and knowledge. But there is one thing Suke can be sure of, that is, at this moment, he is above time. After carefully experiencing the long river of time again, Suke still shook his head. Sure enough, the power of time is difficult to fully master, and it consumes a lot of energy. Even as strong as he is a little weak after a short period of time. It still takes some time to fully control time, but what he lacks the least at the moment is time. Let's go somewhere else and try out the most basic abilities. Thinking of this, Suke opened another space channel and came to an unknown ocean on Earth. Let's go back 10,000 years first. Thinking of this, Suke suddenly had a time magic circle similar to a clock in his hand. He gently set the time on the magic circle to 10,000 years, and then he waved his hand at the ocean in front of him. In an instant, the time stone began to show its power. As the time magic circle rotated rapidly, the ocean began to disappear gradually, and then land appeared. Towering trees rose from the ground, and unknown creatures began to appear. Soon, what appeared in front of Suke was no longer an ocean, but a vibrant primitive jungle. This is the power of time. Looking at the scene of 10,000 years ago that he had restored with time, Suke felt extremely happy. As expected, it felt great to have power. After experiencing the power of time, Suke opened another space channel, stepped into it, and appeared in his own home. Thinking about it carefully, today was really busy. First, I went to Tony's place and learned that Tony was creating Ultron. Then, during dinner, there was a robbery. Later, Diana rescued him heroically. Then, I got the time stone from the Ancient One. This day was really fulfilling. Despite this, Suke still didn't let Emma go that night. In the next few days, Suke didn't go anywhere, but stayed at home to familiarize himself with the power of the time stone. On this day, someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. came again. Dear, Agent Coulson from S.H.I.E.L.D. is here to see you. Sook was getting familiar with the power of the time stone by the swimming pool when Emma's voice rang again. Why is it someone else this time? Not Black Widow. Sook thought to himself, and then shouted, "Let him in." Soon, Coulson in a black suit walked in. "Mr. Suke, nice to meet you." When Coulson saw Suke for the first time, he immediately greeted him with a smile. "Come on, Coulson, it's not the first day we've known each other. Stop calling me sir all the time. It sounds a bit awkward. Just call me by my name." Suke said slowly. "Since you said so, I won't be polite," Coulson said with a smile. It was obvious that Suke had regarded him as a friend, which made him a little flattered. However, as a professional agent, he quickly returned to normal. "Tell me, what did Nick Fury ask you to come to me about? To be honest, I'm a little busy recently. If it's not something important, you should let Tony and Banner do it, so that they don't have to do anything else and do something stupid," Suke said. There is no doubt that Suke was referring to Ultron at the end. But Coulson naturally didn't understand this. "I assure you that this matter is definitely important, and it is about mutants. Because you have a special relationship with mutants, the director thinks it is better to tell you about this matter first," Coulson said. His face suddenly became a little serious. "About mutants?" Suke listened curiously, and then nodded and said, "Go on, I'm listening." Then, in Coulson's narration, Suke finally knew the whole story. 2 days ago, there was a very important meeting in New York City. Because it was about a global topic, the leaders of some countries came. There were about 30 people. The original time was to arrive in New York City that afternoon, but until that evening, the person in charge of reception still did not wait for the arrival of these other national leaders. More than 30 people, 30 planes, and they didn't receive a single one. This time, the President of the United States was completely panicked, and then he began to send people to contact those countries to ask what happened. After all, if so many people got into trouble in the United States, then he would definitely not be able to continue to be the President of the United States. As a result, the information given by more than 30 countries was roughly the same, that is, they didn't know either. Leaders of 30 countries, along with 30 planes, disappeared inexplicably. Recalling the previous Mutant Registration Act incident, the president pointed the finger at mutants for this incident, believing that mutants were responsible, and ordered Nick Fury to find out what was going on as soon as possible. Then, Coulson came. After listening to Coulson's story, Sook suddenly thought of another thing. In the original timeline of the X-Men, Magneto once had a plan, which was to turn humans into mutants, but of course, this plan was finally stopped by the X-Men. Could it be that Magneto did what happened now? After all, controlling 30 planes at once, Sook really couldn't think of anyone else who could do this except Magneto. But then again, this is only a guess so far, and Sook doesn't intend to tell anyone before it is confirmed. Thinking of this, Sook looked at Coulson and said, "So, you should have evidence to prove that this was done by mutants, right?" "Of course not," Coulson said with a bitter face. "If there was, the president would have sent troops to rescue him long ago. After all, he is the leader of more than 30 countries. It is because there is no evidence that the president asked us to investigate." "What happens after the investigation?" Sook asked again. Coulson's face changed, and then he shook his head and said, "I don't know, but according to my inference, if this incident was really done by mutants, then humans are likely to go to war with mutants directly. After all, capturing the leaders of more than 30 countries at once is something that humans absolutely cannot tolerate. Since you are suspicious, you can go to Professor X to confirm it." "Why are you looking for me? I am not a mutant," Suke said helplessly. "No, ever since the Mutant Registration Act incident, the president has issued an order prohibiting any further contact with mutants. Moreover, the attitude of mutants towards S.H.I.E.L.D. is getting worse and worse. As soon as we show up, they will think that we are going to arrest them, and it is easy for something bad to happen. That is why we would like to ask you to make a trip. If this incident was not done by mutants, then everything is fine. But if this incident was done by mutants, then please ask them to return these leaders to us. After all, this is not a trivial matter." Quote, Coulson replied. After thinking for a while, Sook finally decided to go to the mutant school, because if he didn't go, S.H.I.E.L.D. would go there. Once these guys showed up at the mutant school, they would definitely cause a lot of trouble. For Jean and Wanda, he decided to make a trip. Thinking of this, Sook nodded and said, "Okay, I know about this matter. Don't worry, I will go back to investigate." Hearing what Sook said, Coulson was secretly relieved, and then replied, "In that case, I'll leave it to you. I'll take my leave first." After saying this, Coulson was ready to leave. Wait. But at this moment, Soo-K suddenly thought of something and called Coulson. "Is there anything else?" Coulson looked back and saw something similar to a magic circle suddenly appeared in Sook's hand, emitting bursts of green light. "What is this?" Coulson was a little curious. Sook didn't explain anything, but just fiddled with the magic circle in his hand, then pointed it at Coulson and said, "Coulson, this is a gift for you." The power of the time stone instantly took effect on Coulson, making Coulson 10 years younger. What happened? Why do I feel a little different? At the same time, Coulson also noticed the changes in his body. His body seemed to become younger, which made him a little unbelievable. "Okay, go back and take a good look in the mirror," Soo-K said with a smile. "Thank you, I'll take my leave now." After saying this hastily, Coulson immediately ran outside. He was eager to know what had happened to him. A moment later, sitting in the car, Coulson looked at his face through the windshield with an incredible look on his face. "Boss, what's going on? Why do you look like you're 10 years younger? You're completely different from just now," the agent in charge of driving said in surprise. Coming back to his senses, Coulson smiled and said, "This is a gift." On the other side, after a simple tidy-up, Soo-K came to the mutant school again. "Hi, Sook." As soon as he appeared in the mutant school, a silver-white light flashed before Sook's eyes, and then Quicksilver appeared in front of Sook. "Where is your sister? Why isn't she with you?" Looking around, Soo-K didn't see Wanda, and he couldn't help but become curious. "Oh, you mean my sister. I don't know what happened to her recently. She suddenly became very interested in being a teacher, and said she wanted to be a teacher like Hank and the others. She has been staying in the library these days," Quicksilver said speechlessly. But Sook was very relieved when he heard this. He thought Wanda was not here anymore. "By the way, do you need me to call my sister over? He will be very happy to see you." Then, Quicksilver suddenly thought of something and said hurriedly. Sook shook his head and said, "Don't worry, let's talk about this later. I'm here for something serious, and it may be related to your father." "Is he still here now?" When he heard Sook mention Magneto, the smile on Quicksilver's face disappeared instantly, and then he said unhappily, "He's gone for a long time. He left in the afternoon when you left, and he left with the group of mutants he brought with him, and he hasn't come back since then." "So that's it." Sook nodded thoughtfully, and at the same time became more and more certain that Magneto was the one who did it. This guy really has crazy. However, in order to further confirm, Sook went to Professor X's office. He thought Professor X should know something. When Sook found Professor X was teaching a group of children. When he saw Sook, he immediately shouted to the children, "Okay, children, today's class is over. The topic just now is the homework for you. Go back and study hard. I will check it tomorrow." After the children left, Professor X looked at Sook and said, "What's wrong? Is there anything wrong?" Sook sighed slightly, and then said, "Professor, Magneto is causing trouble again." "What's going on?" Upon hearing this, the smile on Professor X's face instantly disappeared. "Just now, Agent Coulson from S.H.I.E.L.D. came to me and said that there was an international conference in New York 2 days ago, with leaders from more than 30 countries attending, but the person in charge of reception did not receive the leaders of these 30 countries, and even their plane disappeared. They searched for a long time but couldn't find it. Finally, they suspected that it was done by mutants. The President of the United States handed the matter over to S.H.I.E.L.D. for investigation, but Coulson was worried that their arrival would accelerate the deterioration of the relationship between humans and mutants, so they asked me to check it out. Professor, there should be no one else except Magneto who could have caused the complete disappearance of 30 planes, right?" Sook said slowly. When the professor heard this, his face suddenly turned ugly, and then he pinched his forehead and said with a headache, "Before Eric left a few days ago, he told me, he said he had found a way to transform humans into mutants. Since humans and mutants cannot live in peace, he would turn all humans into mutants. But this kind of thing is really too unbelievable, so I didn't pay much attention to it at the time, just thought he was joking, but after hearing what you said, I suddenly realized that he didn't seem to be joking. This guy is really crazy. Does he know what he is doing? At the end of the words, Professor X was about to roar. Converting the leaders of 30 countries into mutants at once, this is such a crazy thing. If he really succeeds, the conflict between humans and mutants will become more and more serious, and then there will be no choice but to fight. No, we can't let this happen. We must stop him. Professor X looked at Suke and said seriously, "So do you know where he is?" Suke asked. You know, although he has the space stone, one of the necessary conditions for space teleportation is that he must know the specific location of the teleportation. If there is no specific target location, even if he has the space stone, he can't find Magneto. When the professor heard this, his face became a little ugly again. Although Eric and I have known each other for a long time, I have never known anything about his whereabouts. In order to avoid being found by me, he has been wearing the helmet that can prevent consciousness from invading, so I can't find him. But don't worry, I will try to use the brainwave amplifier. I will stop him no matter what. After saying this, Professor X left in a hurry. Seeing this, Suke could only shake his head helplessly, and then went to find Chin. Lying comfortably by the lake, with his head resting on Chin's legs, enjoying the treatment of Chin bringing the peeled grapes to his mouth, Suke really enjoyed it at this moment. Chin brought the peeled grapes to Suke's mouth and said speechlessly, "I didn't expect that Magneto would do this. He kidnapped the leaders of 30 countries at once, and wanted to turn them into mutants. This is crazy." Eating the sweet grapes, Suke said, "It's a bit crazy, but this guy has been working hard for mutants. Everything he does is for mutants." That's right. From the perspective of humans, Magneto is undoubtedly a supervillain. But from the perspective of mutants, Magneto is not only not a bad guy, but a hero. That's why so many mutants follow him. Jean paused and suddenly said, "Actually, I suddenly feel that this is not so bad, right? Turning the leaders of those countries into mutants and letting them feel our unfair treatment is not a good thing. Maybe humans will change their attitude towards us by then. How can it be that simple?" Suke shook his head and said, "The reason why mutants are mutants is because their genes are different from those of humans. If you want to turn humans into mutants, you need a complete genetic change. This kind of thing is not so easy, and it is very dangerous." In the original plot, Magneto successfully transformed a human congressman into a mutant, but not long after, this human congressman died. This is because Magneto cannot completely change human genes. If he really succeeded in transforming those 30 national leaders into mutants, then there is no doubt that these people will die. But it is obvious that Magneto does not know this flaw. I have to say, this is really a crazy plan. But for Suke, this is not a troublesome thing, because he has the power of the Time Stone. Even if Magneto really turns those national leaders into mutants, he can easily change this kind of thing. Just when he thought of this, Suke's heart suddenly moved again. If that's the case, then why should he stop Magneto? Let Magneto finish this matter, and then he will appear as the savior, isn't it better? Apart from anything else, at least he can control the leaders of those 30 countries and do some other things. Thinking of this, Suke began to have an idea in his mind. At the same time, he began to hope that Magneto could succeed, and even when necessary, he would help Magneto. Time passed quickly, and it was night in the blink of an eye. At this time, Professor X finally received good news. Although Professor X did not find Magneto, he found the little rascal who was secretly taken away from the school by Magneto. At this moment, they are on an isolated island in the Atlantic Ocean. Because of the long-term use of the brainwave amplifier, Professor X fell asleep after telling everyone the news. In addition, it was too late to act, so everyone planned to wait for Professor X to wake up before discussing the next step. As for Sook, he had already set off when he just got the news, because he felt that he needed to have a good talk with Magneto. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.